weeks ago, and placed traffic counters as well out at the two locations for Norfolk Southern. Found some interesting information with regards to a couple of prolonged blockages of the town with the crossing by Norfolk Southern. So that's something that we'll likely discuss here after a little bit. I think we've got an opening for it at 8:45, so we'll just reserve a lot of our comment for there. So I think, Frank, you've got the traffic in it, so we'll talk about that then. Part-time summer help. It's time again to go ahead and start spraying roadsides for vegetation control. I have money in the budget for 2 part-time people to begin spraying and spray throughout the summer. We've again reached out to the local schools for any students who may be interested, whether they're in the FFA program or something like that, kind of tying in with what they're doing in school. We didn't have a whole lot of success with it last year. We're trying it again. If not, then we'll have to reach out and get someone else in. So, but we'd like to start on the 18th.
Do you have an age limit on that when you do that? 18 or the FB
18? Yeah, 18.
I think 18 is a good age.
So, next item, additional appropriations. If you look on the next attachment, you'll find the numbers that we're looking to move. This is in preparation for our paving season, which is around the corner. In MVH restricted, I'd like to place $100,000 in our stone line item, $50,000 in our bituminous line item, $1,625,300 in highway paving projects. Also would like to place $25,000 in our equipment repair to cover some early extensive repairs that we've had. Also like to add $20,000 to be placed in our uniforms and towels line item, as we made a couple of changes with the safety moves from the incident that we had earlier in the year, where we're more visible. Blue just wasn't getting it. Everybody's got safety jackets, but they're, these shirts are much better. So we got some uniforms that suited that. So.
What do you mean? You have uniforms that have reflective material on them, or they're right. Yellow, or?
Yeah, yellow shirt with the reflective, required reflective striping and everything on it. And that way in the summertime, they're already dressed for it. They're out and can go. In the wintertime, we've still got the jackets where they can put over the top. So basically what we did was just got a summer uniform shirt. So. And in local road and street, I'd like to place $150,000 in the stone line item and $520,000 placed in bituminous line item. And in the solid waste fund, I'd like to place $10,000 in refuse and disposal and $25,000 in the dumpster sites line item, and that would cover the proposed paving, the chip seal paving of the Jasper site.
And you coming to us with these numbers is at the request of the council. This is how they want it to be done instead of having it in the normal budget process, or is this something different than that?
Once we do this every year.
I know we do it all the time, but I mean, is there a reason it's not just normal? This would be the regular budget process?
Well, every year we have an unspent amount of our budget that we never know what's going to be left. So when the year rolls around and the money that's left over, we see what we've got and we start putting it in place. So it's typical.
This comes out of MVH and Road and Street.
Yes.
Which are revenue sources different than county general.
Mm-hmm.
specifically for highway, but the council has to appropriate it into these categories. Am I right on that? Am I kind of saying that right? Do we keep a balance in those accounts? In other words, is this 100% of the MVH or?
No, it's not 100%.
No.
What they don't spend in the previous year, it's budgeted. So at budget time, we assume you're spending every dime you budget.
Mhm.
What they don't spend, they can reallocate in the next year, but you gotta go through this process.
Yeah, sometimes there's a little bit left over outside of the budget that we have all the money placed. And then throughout the course of the year, we won't spend 100% of our budget, so all that money goes back and we have it again for the next year.
Go back into the account, but yeah.
And the same way, even with these funds, if you didn't, I mean, $20,000 sounds like a lot of money for uniforms and towels. If you don't spend it, it'll go back to the budget. You'll request it again next year for whatever the needs are next year.
Right, MVH, the council couldn't appropriate MVH for other than
Just highway.
the highway related expenses.
Just as in Hume Bridge, it has to be for the bridges
Right.
and approaches.
And what do you plan on buying out of the equipment for $50,000? Is that?
The $50,000, I did have, if you'll go to, and that's our next item on 4, if you go to the second attachment page, what we have anticipated here for 2022, the $50,000 is going to go towards the purchase of a used dirt loader. While at the road school, I was starting to kind of, ask a lot of questions if anyone knew of an available one. We've been looking online for one. We've had pretty decent luck with some of the distributors that we've bought offline, that type of thing for used equipment. So we'd like to try to do this as well. Kind of like we had talked earlier, it's in agricultural terms, it's kind of like a combine. You're going to spend a whole lot of money and you're only going to use it a couple months out of the year. So the way we're set up, it almost makes sense to try to do something. If we can find a good used piece of equipment, it's going to last us quite a while. So the one we have, the transmission is about gone. It's hard to find another replacement. I think it's a 1986 model. We've also got a twin in the garage now that we've been parting out. And that transmission doesn't work with this one here. So we're kind of on borrowed time with that one. So we're looking around trying to get a replacement for that.
I'll move that we support the supervisor moving forward to council with the additional appropriations as they're listed.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? Anything else from Steve on that? All in favor, say aye. Aye, motion carries.
Okay. And then with reference to that second page, if you look down, again, 2022, we had planned on a road striping painter, which we've already purchased. It should be coming in here within the next couple of weeks so we can get it ready to go for the season. We've got a road grader that we're considering, the used dirt loader, and then obviously the 4x4 flatbed, which we had purchased last year, but obviously with not being available and it went down, we had to get something else. So that came out of my 22 budget when it was actually supposed to be in the 21. So, but anyhow, you look at 23, 24, 25, and 26. Those are the items that we're looking at for replacement in the next few years, just to give us an idea where we're at and what's coming. So, any questions on that? the road grader, we were gonna ask for some, help from QCAP to purchase. I think we were gonna put so much money towards it. And then, ask for some help. I did some calling around, with some of our vendors, to try to get some sort of a budgetary number on it. And, pass this down to Sharon. We bought one 3 years ago in the neighborhood of, 265,000 and change. This is crazy high. So, we're still waiting for numbers from a different vendor to see if they're gonna be a little bit more realistic. That's kind of what we're being faced with in the times that we're in. I'm a little reluctant to pull this trigger, at least for right now.
Is this comparable to the one you bought a few years ago?
Same machine.
So it was what, 270 3 years ago?
Restaurant equipment's done the same thing.
It's across the board.
Yeah, I mean,
I saw that and I just, thank God I was sitting down.
and you want to just, and I don't know about this equipment, but I mean, you're lucky to find it, like,
That's what we talked about. I talked with Phil Cornelius, who's formerly with Davis County, and they used to do a lease program, and then after the lease was up, they had the opportunity to, either buy the machine or turn it back and get another one and do another lease. And sometimes on a piece of leased equipment, if they're turning it back, the hours probably aren't too bad. The machine's not in too bad a shape. You can still get an extended warranty. And it's not a new machine, and then, certainly a whole lot cheaper than this, but is anything available?
How many road graders do we have?
5.
Five?
Yeah, we've got one for each road district, and then we've got 2 spares. So, and one of those spares is used for our shoulder liner. After we do blacktop projects, we put that piece on and it puts shoulder stone out on the edge of the road. And our old 93 Champion, that's the one that we would be trading. It's pretty much there for snowplow duties.
Okay.
So,
I guess on the bright side, I thought the used market's probably pretty good too, right? As far as your trading value.
yeah,
Oh, yeah, we'll get traded.
Except we drive ours into the ground because we use them so long. So
yeah.
We still call them auto patrols.
yeah, I mean, at some point, my first thought was, well, at some point it's better to pay some other company to do it, a private company to do it. Then I'm thinking, well, they're going to pay these prices. Their prices are going to go up as well.
And it all gets passed forward.
Okay, so you'll just report back to us when you find get some other pricing.
Okay. Computer replacement. This is on the last 2 attachment pages on your report. We spoke with Matrix Integration for the replacement of our computers at the garage. The new equipment involves, it includes 4 HP Business Pro Desk 600 computers, 1 HP ZBook Firefly workstation, 6 HP monitors. The total cost is $7,366.86. When you look at the quotes, we had chosen the HP monitor. It's a much better one than the Acer that's there. The HPs that we have now have lasted us 10 years, so I know we're going to get good quality out of those.
So Sandy, why are we not on the rotation?
They are. This is their time.
10 years? thought they were.
Monitors we don't always replace.
Okay, the monitor is what's 10 years old, the rest of it is.
Many of our monitors over there, we use them until they,
Okay.
and they're starting to die.
Yeah, my computer went down Thursday, and after several attempts, it did come up.
I think my office has had 2 CPU units and it's still on the same monitor.
Makes sense.
And if they are good, and like I'll grab his old ones and still use them if I need them.
So for this request, there's money available because it's his turn. So it's, you're just kind of letting us know that this is what you're doing. But have any questions or problems with that?
Should beats the price of the road grader.
That's a good point.
That's right.
Well, let me preface that with, they find these and they're in stock, and they hold them for a few days, and then if we don't purchase them, then they
Yeah.
release them.
And for right now, they are stopped from what we understand, so this would be a
So you're kind of taking what you can get.
grab and get type of thing, so. So if you're okay with that, then that's what we'd like to propose.
On number 6, it's got some bad air heaters. Anybody have any questions on those, or can we just declare those surplus, jump them? I'll move that we declare the heaters at the 2 locations that are electric junk, that you can dispose of those.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
And disposition of truck 104, we've taken a couple pictures of it. We're gonna put a brief description of the truck together with it. I'd like to put it on the DuBois County government page where we can ask for a silent sealed bids for the purchase of the unit in as-is condition. We'll hold a reserve on it to assure that we get a fair price.
What is truck 104?
Truck 104 is the old brine truck that we were trading, just basically it's not gonna include an engine.
It's number 1.
It's not gonna include an engine.
Anybody have any questions?
No.
I'm fine with that, as long as disposing of it in that fashion is a legal way we can do it. I'm happy with Mr. Schneider. Got any problems with them doing that?
So I don't, I'm looking at it now, and if I got an issue, I'll talk to Steve. We'll take care of disposing of it appropriately.
What
You're not
we'll do
trading
is
it then?
we'll collect,
Not trading it?
Or
No.
that's that truck?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, this
That
is what we
should-
talked about a couple of meetings ago.
Yeah.
On the shade longer, yeah.
what we're gonna do is collect sealed bid. We'll probably open them up here to verify and see that we've met the reserve that we wanna hold, and we'll authorize the sale. We'll do that here.
Anyone opposed to moving forward in that fashion? Okay, that sounds good.
Okay. And final thing up, I've got a meeting on this coming Thursday at 8:30 with Michael Costello, discuss the reclamation process for the Shamrock Mine in Boone Township, so.
So that's the firm that in the bankruptcy is in charge at this point?
Yeah, so he was in town several weeks ago, talked with the landowners. He and I are gonna get together Thursday and go over some discussion about what the plan is. We've got several things that we wanna get covered and just see where we go from here, so. I think they wanna start working on it later on this spring, so.
Do you need legal involved, either Mr. Schneider or that other bankruptcy person?
I don't
or
think
anything
so
like
at
that?
this point, but I will keep everybody updated on the conversations and where we go from here. That way we don't take up a lot of their time, because most of this is gonna be construction talk and all that, so. I'm sure Greg's got better things to do.
I like your version, your Cliff Notes version. Thanks, Steve.
All right, thank you. Anything else for Mr. Berg? All right,
Thanks.
Mr. Wendell?
Okay, traffic count data for Bird's Eye Railroad crossings, they're in front of you. 1175, kind of surprised me by the amount of cars that were on it. Had a total,
You wanna bring it up at 8:45?
I can, but there's numbers there for you, so let's just put it that way.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, the ADA plan, transition plan, I'd like to get that approved. I brought that to you guys 2 meetings ago. I didn't know if anyone had a chance to review it. Any questions, any concerns? Are you guys good with approving it?
I think I gave a few suggestions, and I think you've made those, so
Yeah.
I'm satisfied with it.
I'm good, if you're good with it.
Yeah, I am, because I'd like to get that. So with that being said, I should go on here. I do need a resolution signed by you guys approving it. I don't have a resolution number, Sandy, I will need one of those.
It'd be number 5 if you have none, because I got 3 and 4 here.
There it is. So the resolution is just stating the adoption of this plan as is. With your approval and signatures, I'll scan it, I'll put it in with the file, and then I'll go upload this whole thing onto our website. And that'll bring us back into compliance with ADA.
Okay, I'll move that we approve resolution number 2022-5, resolution adopting the updated ADA transition plan.
Second.
Any other discussion?
I'll need that by word.
Okay.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
What's resolution?
5005 for
Just 5.
2022-5.
So that'll get that off the books, which is great. Thank you. And then paving projects is just an update. You'll see this on all reports from now on because it's getting to paving season. Round 1 of round 2 of 2021 community crossing we bid back in December. Those will get started here actually in time. My goal is to talk to CNR this week, if not next, and find out what their schedule looks like to get them on the books so they get started on paving that round. And then the next round we'll bid at the first meeting in May. You'll see the advertisement come out next week, the first round. You'll see those in the paper, so anybody asks, yeah, they're coming. Those are the ones that are coming. So,
The advertisements from NDOT will.
no, from this, we advertise. NDOT does not advertise in our paving projects.
But this is still the 2021.
No, 2021 are all done. It's round 2 of 21 community crossings are already done. They're bid. I'm just waiting for CNR to give a bid. These are, the ones I have listed here are in-house paving projects.
Oh, in-house.
These are the ones we take care of. They're all
I was
funded.
gonna say, your 2022 community
Crossings.
crossings, it's not yet
Correct.
been,
Correct. I am hope, Steve heard middle of April. I've heard end of April.
Okay.
We'll see. Best I can say.
that was my confusion. I thought suddenly we were
Yeah.
talking about community crossing 2022.
So it'll hopefully be soon. We can go from there. So.
Okay.
That's all I got. Unless you guys have for me.
Which portion of 900 South is getting done?
Which portion of 900 South
Yeah,
from
West of Holland.
west of Holland? Where's the resolution?
I think it went back down.
Okay.
I'll need copies of that.
Anybody have any questions for Brent? And we will review those numbers, traffic count numbers here in a little while. It's just about 8:30. We'll have Megan Rudolph come up, Director of Community Corrections.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How's it
Morning,
going?
Megan.
I think CTP is on the agenda. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay, so for CTP conversation, today I am here to seek approval to purchase another vehicle for community corrections, to replace the Dodge Journey that we currently have. That one was donated to community corrections as the sheriff's department was getting rid of vehicles several years ago. And so we were able to use that to do our field checks. Our field officers need a vehicle to go out to do home checks on individuals who are on home detention, electronic monitoring bracelets, just to ensure that their participants are in compliance, that their homes are appropriate. And the Journey has had some mechanical issues over the last several years, really, so to speak. I can relate to driving our vehicles into the ground. But so I sent out several quotes via email on Friday, I believe. I'm hoping that you all got that, and with the intent to move forward with a request for approval. The commissioners approved that we could move forward with purchasing a vehicle not to exceed $45,000.
Community council.
What, I'm sorry,
That's okay.
the county council.
The only thing
Yeah.
I had a question about is on the quotes, there's one of the, they were equal bids. They were bidding on different things. One had like a different package for the paint and one had lights, and I didn't see lights on the other ones. That was the only thing that I thought was.
Yeah, with you're talking about Washington Chryslers. Excuse me. Our field officers don't need the full light bar like typical law enforcement need, but they do need some like safety lights, like flashing lights. So the Washington Chrysler bid does include that, and it's still lower than the others. So that was kind of why we decided.
And then the other, with the one, I think both the base prices were the same, weren't they? For Washington Chrysler and then the local Chrysler dealer, $38,950 or something, but.
$38,995.
Right, I think they had the same destination charge, the same vehicle charge. The
Mhm.
difference was on a paint structure and on the lights, but.
Yes, and they just, to what our field officers had looked up, they don't do that sort of work. We did have a quote from Harmonic Electronic from a previous time that did not beat this. But if you feel like we should try and get another one that's a little bit more recent, we could do that specifically for the lights and those sorts of things.
I think my thing is just, I'd always prefer to buy from a DuBois County person if we could. And it seemed very close, other than one had lights and one didn't, and one had paint, a different paint.
I'm not married to that quote necessarily either, so I can definitely.
I don't want to make it any more difficult for her just to buy the vehicle and have it come in, but.
It's a technicality maybe, but Washington Chrysler Plymouth is located in Washington, but owned by a DuBois County resident.
That is true. Yes.
It used to be, I don't know,
Right. Or at least partially. Right?
partially owned that way, yeah.
Mhm.
So if they're, I think either of the bids are fine. I guess in the future, if we can find any way to buy directly in DuBois County, probably is more beneficial to our people, but I don't think it's a substantial thing. What does the rest of the board think?
I'm fine with her going with Washington Chrysler. I would agree if we can go local, but without any extra burden.
Commissioner Brown?
Yeah, no, I remember Washington Chrysler. The only question I had was kind of, you're trading in a Journey
Mhm.
for a Durango. That is a step, as much as I know about it anyway, that is a step up in model classification. I don't know what all the accessories and the packages that were on them. Is there a reason for that other than the fact that maybe this is available, or, explain that a little bit?
Yeah. Mostly it's because the feedback that we've received regarding Journeys has not been positive.
Okay.
Just from the people on our advisory board, their transmissions and engines and stuff, vehicle stuff, have not been very reliable. So I can't speak directly to, the problems that they've experienced, but just the feedback that I've received specifically from people who know more about cars than I do on our advisory board.
Okay,
Sure.
and that was
It
my
would be-
other comment. This has been approved by your advisory board.
Oh, yes, I don't come
Yeah.
before you guys without
I
that.
appreciate that level of scrutiny as well.
Sure.
I'm not sure they still make a jerk.
I don't know.
Maybe
if they
no, maybe
do.
they don't. I don't know. That was.
But what, I think more to your point, you're saying there's a Ford Fiesta, there's a Ford, there's 3 level or 4 levels of vehicles. This one is a different class of level. It's not that you were expecting her to buy another Journey.
Sure,
You're saying instead of mid-size, this is more of a full-size vehicle.
yes. And I think for us too, the intent would be to be able to use this not just for field checks, although it will be beneficial for field checks whenever it's snowing or anything like that. That will come in handy, but also that third row seating whenever we do any sort of out of town training.
Mhm.
We could use that vehicle instead of having to pay out mileage for a staff member to go to training too. So that was one of the added benefits.
And the reason during the advisory board meeting that I was fine with it with maybe a little different level of scrutiny than I would have at different places, because they earn the money. It's within their programming earnings, I suppose, and this is what they think is the best route for their funds. So
Okay.
I would support people. If they bring money to the table, I'm more flexible with how they spend it. So I would be ready to approve this unless there's any other discussion. I move that we approve the purchase of the CCP vehicle, in this case a Dodge Durango from Washington Chrysler.
No second.
Any other discussion? Did I say something wrong? I thought you were looking
No,
at
I was just, if you would rather that I move forward trying to get a comparable quote from a local dealer with the light bar and those sorts of things included, I can go with the cheaper of the two. But I'm happy with your motion either way. I just wanted to make sure I was
do we
clear.
want to give her that flexibility and that she can make the decision between the two?
But did I not hear you say that the local dealer did not have a light bar and was still more expensive?
So
Did I not hear that?
They had $695 for a different paint package. That's, in my
Paint
estimation,
package.
that's the only thing that made it different from the base price between the two of them. And then that's why when you don't have you're not comparing the same product. So the Washington Chrysler one had a light bar included, the one locally had a different paint package. So you're not comparing exact items.
Okay.
they were almost exactly
Almost.
the same. Yeah.
So I guess,
I wouldn't split hairs on it, I'd just go get the one from Washington.
Okay.
get us ready to go and
Yeah.
spend your time on something
That
else.
would be my
Yes, we have a first and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries.
I will need a copy of the quote or something.
Sure. Okay. The next piece is requesting approval for the creation of a position which has been funded through a federal grant that Community Corrections received. It's called the COSAP grant. It's Community Opioid Stimulant and Substance Abuse Program. And that grant has many levels of planning, implementation, running the operations of the program. There's also many levels of financial reporting, quarterly reports, programmatic reports, data regarding the success of the program. And so one of the pieces that we requested whenever we submitted the grant was to include a COSAP project manager. So this project manager, I sent out the job description to you all on Friday. This position would do all those things that I mentioned earlier in terms of managing the grant. It's a $600,000 grant over the course of 3 years. And this position would just ensure that we as a county and community implement the grant in the way that we said that we would, collect the data in terms of outcomes and make sure that it's producing the outcomes that we need, and if not, we'll make adjustments. Specifically, this is to create a therapeutic community in the work release facility. So this would give our participants the opportunity to come into work release and spend an undetermined amount of time. It's not set yet, but a period of time where they'll be able to be assessed, create a case plan, and work intensively on treatment intervention that they may need to help reduce the likelihood that they'll reoffend once they are released from our program. It also allows for some funding for transitional housing. So as our participants leave our therapeutic community or work release or even another program within the justice system, it would support their fees as they transition potentially into a recovery home. It could look like contract beds at Dove House or Next Steps, one of the two recovery homes that are coming into this community. We're not entirely sure exactly what that will look like. We're still in the planning process for the grant, but once we have this position secured, we think we'll really be able to start moving forward with the next steps of actual implementation. So this position is, at least on the job description, drafted as a PAT 4. The wage range is listed on there within what it was approved for 2022. At the council meeting, I requested a biweekly pay of $1,807.40, which is within that salary range.
What was it, $1,800 biweekly?
$1,807.40.
This is a position we talked about.
Different.
2 week different. This
It is different.
This is different.
That one was
Yes.
for the J-RAC, that was the
Yeah,
state.
right.
Justice
That's what I thought we
reinvestment.
were at for a minute, and I thought, no, maybe not.
And I do want to commend you on getting better with the acronym.
Yeah.
You were really uncomfortable with it a few weeks ago. Now you nailed it. I like that.
I've been
You
typing
worked
it
on
out.
it.
Been typing it out multiple times in emails and such.
What you said?
And Marky, I saw you had him on this email. Was he fine with that wage classification at 4? And has that been looked at by, I don't know much about those things.
That's
I
what
know
she
that
classified the last.
The last
the
project
J-RAC
manager
person
was
was the
also.
same.
Yes, and I've not received feedback.
It's within.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah. Yeah,
Hi there.
it's within, I think, appropriate, yeah.
Again, I'll say the same argument that I had for the J-RAC program. I don't see a downside if it gives us the opportunity to explore the therapeutic community, explore helping people get in transitional housing. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work, but this is a way to find out. I mean, indications are that this is the right way to proceed. But it sounds like a fine idea to me, and we can say that we will approve it for the length of the funding.
Again, it's, so this is a different grant than what we talked about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, the grant
Month
2
ago.
weeks ago was for 1 year, $104,000, specific to collaboration among partners within the justice system.
Okay.
Yes, so this is fully for the implementation of one specific project in community corrections, which is the
Okay.
COSAC program.
Yeah, no, it's covered by the grant, and we're creating it for the length of that period.
Mhm.
I
This
think
grant,
the only thing I've noticed about this one and possibly the J-RAC one, I think our estimates, when we looked at those for this position, I think the benefits we may have shot just a little bit short, because when the health insurance, our broker was here a couple weeks ago, I think it was $17,000
Okay.
for that part. I think we were at 12 or something on our estimates for these positions. I don't remember exactly, but I think we may be a little short on those.
it was probably even less than that, yeah.
Even less, that's you may want to talk with Sandy whenever this gets implemented, that we have to budget appropriately for the person's health care.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
yes it does.
It's hard to know that number.
Yeah,
Pardon me?
That number's a fluid number, it's hard to know that number.
I
My best
think,
estimate, though, I think it's probably 5,000 higher than what we talked about. So it's significant.
Yeah, typically whenever we talk about insurance, I mean, it is hard to know because it's like, how much did we spend and then divide it by all the employees, but it doesn't always work out that way necessarily. And so what I have previously been using anytime that I budget for insurance is how much I have budgeted for insurance in my DOC grant divided by all the employees that are on that grant. And then, kind of translate it out to every employee that we hire, and then any grant that I apply for. And if that does need to go up, by all means, I'll start writing it in that way for sure.
We need to use the average, if you will, or the cost per employee as is presently known. However, the actual cost depends on the employee and the incidents or the
We've used the global number.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll move that we create the COSAP program manager position as it's been presented to us to exist for the length of the funding.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? Any other comments from the director?
Yeah, I will just also add
Well, we
that,
didn't approve it. I mean, do you have anything else on this one?
specific to the creation, no,
Yeah, okay.
sorry.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Then I would just add that I will at some point come back, because as part of the therapeutic community, we will be working I'll have to put out a request for a proposal for contracted services for the treatment that will be offered in the facility. So the intent would be to work with a local service provider who can do those treatment services in-house. And we'll try to explore some of the best options to keep costs down, but also use the funds that are appropriated in the grant specific to the services
Will this
offered.
be something Life Springs can be involved in?
Definitely, yes. I've had good conversations with them already. I know that I'll have to open it up just to be in compliance with the federal grant and the expectations there. But since they are our partner for most of the services that we offer to our participants, they would be our preferred provider. But we know that there are other really excellent options too, and we're totally open to exploring what all of them are going to look like. I have nothing further.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Railroad crossing discussion. So Brent, you want to come back up? We can start with your numbers, or Steve, whoever was going to present those, and then we can have a brief discussion on that.
So, representing to you on the numbers, King Street, for the week long, 7 days it was out there. I was out there for a full 7 days too. I had it from 12 noon on Friday to I think most of it on 12 noon the following Friday. So 169 cars were northbound and 185 cars were southbound out of the tracks. So southbound is heading from the highway back into the houses, northbound. So it's an AADT of 24 and 26, fairly low. I don't have numbers for the other entrance, but we have 3 homes back there. Then you guys, I guess you guys spoke to a few residents back there. So these are just numbers for you guys to go on.
So this is only the east entrance?
Correct.
The one closest to dead.
West entrance, sorry, west entrance.
West entrance.
The county
West
entrance,
entrance.
yes.
The
County
county.
owned.
Right, county owned.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yes.
County owned.
Now 1175, so northbound, I had 805 cars, so coming out of the Rock Road toward the highway, 805 cars total. Southbound, so heading down into the Rock Road, I had 1,367 cars that my traffic counters counted, so it was significantly higher. Now they were doing work on the tracks or close to the tracks. That could make a big difference there too. Cars, they're trying to make maneuver. It picks up every time something metal goes across it. So that could be why the number is so much higher southbound, because they were trying to exit and get onto the tracks. I get that, but it's still a significant amount of people. So higher number I thought it would be.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it's more than I expected.
Yeah. So those are just the numbers, that's just data for you guys.
As a courtesy to Chief, the fire chief, David Smith at Birdseye, he sent us a letter. Did you guys read that letter? Or was it just to me? Okay, so he asked me to read this to the board, so I will read it regarding the potential closure. So it says, Dear County Commissioners, since 1883, Birdseye was incorporated as a town in DuBois County. And the town and the railroad have been longtime partners. The town was literally built around the railroad for utilization of train shipments and delivery of goods. It is located at the edge of the National Forest at the eastern edge of the county. I'd like the commissioners to consider a non-closure as the option instead of closure of the two crossings. The potential closure of 1175 crossing is the nearest access to Highway 64 when there is a railroad delay, or closure of Highway 145/Cherry Street crossing in town. It's critical for the Birdseye Volunteer Fire Department to have fire emergency responders to get to Birdseye Fire Station from Highway 64. As you can imagine, train stops and blocks access for unlimited amounts of time. This happens almost without warning, with an undetermined amount of time that the crossings are blocked. This causes the town residents to search for alternative routes to the highway. And this is my favorite line. The train engineers often stop to enjoy a treat from the dairy barn. That sounds unreal, but possibly. The closure would also greatly decrease access to the fire department and emergency vehicle to respond when emergencies arise. This entrance is an essential need. The entry to the forest, in these cases, the horse and walking trails of the forest, which many residents, both DuBois and surrounding counties, enjoy for outdoor activity, is still needed for responders to have in case an emergency arises. And then on the King Street one, he says it has 4 houses and a farm. It would create an obstacle for the farm equipment to access the property from the highway. Additionally, the elderly people who currently reside and own the property could be denied access to fire and rescue should it arise. Fire and responders could have great difficulty navigating the curve with their responding vehicles. And looking at the street logistically, there would be no place to turn vehicles around and no access for first responders to access the potential issue. Before decisions are made that greatly hamper access to both areas, we invite the commissioners to come and view the crossings so the decision can be made on the best decision can be made on the taxpayers of the county. Thank you for your time and attention, David Smith, Fire Chief, Birdseye Volunteer Fire Department. So, no, that's that. I just responded to him that I would read that letter. And I agree with his point on especially the King Street, unless there is an appropriately sized turnaround section at the end.
Right.
A large vehicle such as a fire truck would have no option other than to back out. And the road is narrow, so narrow it would take some effort, probably. And we did go visit the location on both of these, and I think we have a pretty good understanding of what's there. The highway department has a pretty good understanding of what's there. I think both of those locations leave something to be desired, but I think my opinion after what I've studied on it and hearing from the fire safety personnel people and learning more about how the railroad operates at times leads me to say that it's probably in the best interest of our community to leave them open at this time. Even with their failings, I think there's more benefit than there are failings. That's where I would stand at this point. I'll open it up to the other commissioners.
Well, yeah, I was up there as well, and 1175 bothers me. That the day we were there and looked at it and looked at the alternative route. If that were closed, the alternative route to get back into the forest is town streets, and those town streets are not, they're one lane, single lane. In some cases, hardly more than a driveway back through there. So bringing a lot of vehicular traffic through that, horse trailers or whatever they are, kind of bothered me. And the numbers are higher than what I expected. The fire chief's point about access to town or from highway to town, if the main, 145 is blocked,
Right.
That's an important consideration as well. King Street, I'm open there yet. I think the west entrance, the county entrance, is a dangerous entrance. Getting up to the track, as they pointed out, they can't even get emergency vehicles up and across that track. If we were to allow them to close that, there would be money available, and that could perhaps be used for a turnaround or some other improvement to that road there to maybe even improve the situation. So I'm open to that one yet.
Commissioner Hostetter?
Is there enough right of way at the end of King Street to do any kind of turnaround? Or would the citizens
There
or
would
whoever
probably have to be some sort of acquisition.
be willing to?
And they won't donate it, I don't believe.
I mean, the railroad owns right of way so many feet, so they would be the ones that would do the turnaround, so, but that's a pretty small, even with
Yeah.
their right of way, it's probably a pretty small area.
Yeah.
I think an important consideration there too, and in talking to the resident, we talked to the resident that day of one of the houses, and his dad lives in the other house, is my understanding. So kind of a family connection there. His main concern was the sidetrack.
Right.
And
That second set of
if
tracks.
there's a sidetrack on the east entrance there, and that evidently gets blocked for long periods of time, or has been blocked for long periods of time. So the railroad, if they were to close that, would have to ensure that east entrance would not be blocked by, I mean, obviously it's gonna be blocked by the train when the train passes through, or maybe occasionally has to stop, but nothing setting on that sidetrack for extended periods of time.
Yeah, there would have to be some sort of agreement by Norfolk to assure that if the closure was to happen, that they didn't block, that it needed to stay open for the residents there.
And you have to have some kind of agreement there, a serious agreement, so.
Yeah.
It is,
So we've seen how easy it is to work with them, that they've violated the agreement.
yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be a serious agreement, that would be a pretty big punishment type thing that, hey, we close that, we got a problem on hands, so.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I didn't know about until that day we went out there. That was a red flag. I was like, oh, that's something I didn't consider.
Yeah.
Because when they were replacing those tracks sat there for a long period of time.
So does the highway department have a recommendation? No recommendation? Okay, that's fine.
I really think,
really-
because we did research other alternatives to the 175, and there really aren't any better ones
No, there's really not.
outside of what's already there, so I think it would probably be more of an hindrance to the residents there if that one were to close. I think the one on King Street is possible, but I think before we come to any sort of agreement, we need to know where Norfolk stood on the blockage of the town location, and see if there's available land to provide a turnaround there. And we need to get those ducks in a row first before we make that decision.
I think you may be in trouble if you try to close both of them. Because if Norfolk decides to put equipment set across there, park for the night, we're in trouble. 1175, I think we're better off leaving that alone. Just
Or even in no fault of their own, if they have something break
right
down.
down. It's 1175. I'm shocked by these numbers. I wouldn't expect these numbers to be that high. That's a lot of vehicles, especially on an off season when horses are they're not riding a lot right now.
Yeah, that's right. It's off season.
Yeah, for them.
But as you mentioned, there's other factors, maybe they were driving.
Yeah, but
there's vehicles down there.
There's such a big difference. 800 on one. The north side where I had the traffic counters, when they were doing their maneuvers, they weren't the south or the north one, the southbound traffic. That the top of my cover was all scarred up. Like they were trying to make turns to get on top of it. It didn't hurt my cover because they're built for that, but it was noticeably worn. So that you could tell that they were probably trying to get themselves lined up. But 800 cars. I know it's a higher number than I expected. The King Street one, I wish I would have had them both at the same time to find out which one they used most of the time. So I much as I don't like railroad crossings, I don't know how we can personally close both.
My move would be that we take no action at this time, meaning that the road would remain open until we have somebody present us with additional or better information, or we know more, then we can take act. I'm not closing the door on these items completely, but for this time, I'm not prepared to move forward.
I agree with you.
Commissioner Brown?
Yeah, no, as I said, I was, the west, King Street entrance was the only one that I might be able to consider, but I'm not. There's so many things have to happen before that can.
Yeah, a lot of things have to fall into place.
Yeah, so that, you know, if we say no to it, I'm okay with that too, but then those things don't have to happen.
Sounds good. I think that probably clarifies that. Is there anybody that would public comment on the road closures on either of these? Seeing none? All right, then I think we are finished with that topic. Let's, Mr. Burke?
I can contact Mr. Ritchie, let him know what we discussed, if he wants to, come back for rebuttal or a discussion on the King Street, you know. I'll just leave that in his.
We'll be happy to hear 15 more minutes from him if he has something else if they want to.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to dress code. We've got 5 minutes for that. Previously, we've had presented to us a 6.3 personal appearance dress code. That would be a modification to what the current dress code is in the handbook. And Treasurer Merkley is here. Do you have anything additional to add?
I don't, I just am presenting the revised, copy, and I think Sandy, did you bring? Okay. Thank you.
What do I have? This?
Yeah.
I wrote on it. Was this the
That
one
was
we
our
were
copy
supposed
to sign.
to
Okay.
use? It was in my file. This one was. Those weren't. This one was. Okay. So, well, and it needed correction anyway. So,
It needs a correction?
yes, it's an easy correction. We just needed.
Okay.
We'll get to that. We'll start with you guys. Commissioner Ramos, do you have a comment?
I don't, think we commented on it the last time, and I was okay with it at that point. Still okay with it. Yeah. I know that at the last meeting, you and I talked just briefly if you had any additional changes to it, but I don't. I think it's adequate or good that the department heads can use this to manage the dress in their departments. Every department is different and every day is different, so it's general enough, but good enough that they can manage that. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I agree, and I support this. I think it's a good idea.
So I'll just give my 2 comments, then we can make a motion on it and get it behind us one way or the other. I think the dress codes are a strong reflection of your organization. They can impact the brand, you know, how we're looked at, how the general public perceives our organization. And in the first line of it, it says that dress, grooming, personal cleanliness standards contribute to the morale of all employees and affect the image presented to visitors. And my argument would be in our business, public service, government, is our blue jeans the image we wish to present. I saw Mr. Kaiser was in here a minute ago. If I was going into a professional office or a professional atmosphere, I'd rather see someone that took time to present themselves in that fashion than someone that had on sweatshirt and blue jeans, or even if it was a nice sweatshirt, nice blue jeans. I think that there's a difference in image and how the public can perceive us. So I would I don't want to water down what we already have. So I would be opposed to making any changes. That being said, we do have a dress code presented in front of us. And we can take action on it.
Okay.
Commissioner Hofstadter, a moment to review it for a final time.
Let me see. It's the same one I'm looking at here.
Commissioner Brown, you do have a version with signature lines on it?
It does not have signature lines on
I
it, but
added
everything
that, so
else,
we can-
everything else is the same on it, yes. Yes. And it, I don't think it differs that much. It clarifies some things, but I don't think it differs that much from what we had, other than the fact that the word denim apparel is acceptable. So,
I would make a motion to accept the changes to the dress code as presented.
Okay, we have a motion, looking for a second.
so,
We have a first and second. Is there anybody, any employees that has any comments or anybody from the public? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Or not aye. Anyone opposed, aye. So the motion carries. And we will sign it once we have a copy that I didn't doodle on. Thank you for your work on that.
Thank you for the signature line. I'll go ahead.
Okay. Anybody need a break?
real quick.
Okay. And we'll come back with the discussion on the mid-state corridor.
I know Bill will talk and talk and talk. Picking on you, Bill.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning.
See if I said him right.
I've seen him a few times.
I think you guys are same thing as sitting in Lockmiller's office, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen him a few times.
Hello.
How are you?
Good.
You doubling as a press today?
That's good. That's how they keep me around.
Commissioner Hospital, I knew that. I would have probably voted in favor. I didn't know they were all the benefits. Right.
It's kept your spacing, that's good, right? We did. But you got tired of you.
Yes, we're doing all kinds of things around here. I feel lucky too, because I heard you do this for the council, so I'm here.
That's right.
Did you add anything new?
Well, I don't know, that's right. Things keep changing, but,
There's nothing written, Chad, so
that's right.
It can go anywhere, right?
it's fluid.
It could,
I'll let you know.
If there's anything different, you'll tell me.
I just want to know if you stopped by for an ice cream.
What's that?
I just wanted to know if you stopped by that place for an ice
Oh,
cream.
no, I love doing it, but, you know, that would be a good selling point for them. We stop trains, our ice cream is so good.
I don't know the
Put that on
universal
a t-shirt,
stuff. I
probably.
just typed it.
Yeah.
Did
I
you
think
hear
it
that?
is a t-shirt, right?
Did you guys put an effective date as an immediate, is it?
I've got on here originally,
So-
so I.
The only thing I thought was comma there worked better than over, that's the only change I had. We approved it as it was written, so that's fine.
And if you
Oh,
just,
just move
and
that.
it's a little-
Take it wherever you want, yeah.
We have,
I know
we have
it's
a camera, we have a
forward
camera
side.
right now. We will rate just.
Yeah, but actually, over here, I still want you guys to see it. Very cool.
I think that's cool.
We actually do, okay, great. That's
Take
fine.
shoes off.
You remember me.
Good.
I walk by your
Like they all
house a lot.
have
It's good, it doesn't make you walk.
The dog does need to walk. Thank you very much. You don't want to have it? I agree. I
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
mayor.
I mean, that was-
You got it. I don't think there is.
So your last one?
Last problem, 12 problems. 12 problems.
That's a lot of kids.
Yeah, I said, let's make it look easy, you have a wedding at the end of the year, so a problem this time here.
Does that include the ones you went to when you were?
No, that's just, oh, yeah. I didn't even have to work post prom, although we had kids coming back over. I didn't go to bed till 2:30 anyways, but after the post prom, they came back over to eat again at the house. Because we're fairly close to the high school, you know.
All right, well, let's get back to order. We were a little behind schedule, so we want to start the mid-states corridor update with Untitled.
And Mark Schrader.
And Mark Trey.
Yeah, so, good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Well, thank you for giving us some time on your agenda. We thought it was time that we come back and with all the delays that have been around the study, give you a little bit of an update as to where we stand. But before we do that, maybe thought it might be helpful for me to just kind of remind all of you, walk you through the timeline of the Mid-States Corridor RDA. The RDA was formed in 2017 and by Du Bois County, Spencer County, City of Jasper, and also the City of Huntingburg. In 2018, the board was appointed. That board consists of myself as chairman, along with Sue Elsterman, Scott Blasey, David Drake, all from Du Bois County, and Ken Mulzer Jr. from Spencer County. So that comprises the board. The interlocal agreement between those governmental entities relative to the governmental funding for a potential study at that point in time was agreed upon also in 2018. I will mention, that this study is a public-private partnership funded 50% by the governmental entities, 50% by private entities that contributed to the RDA. Those funds are collected. We're fully collected, basically waiting to make the final payment to NDOT. Also in 2018, the RDA entered into a memorandum of understanding with NDOT that talked really about how this process was going to go in terms of the selection of the consultant that would conduct the study. And that the process ended up in the Lockmuller Group being contracted for a Tier 1 study, and that was signed in 2019. Kind of jump forward then just a bit. This study was originally scheduled to be completed in June of 2021, fully completed in June of 2021. Right now, due to some delays that was experienced primarily because of COVID, but there were also some delays that I will tell you came from, this study I think resulted in, matter of fact, I think the governor has said that, resulted in the governor recognizing that there are some issues on the existing 231 that will exist with or without whatever decision comes from this study, and awarded $75 million, which is a very nice add for Du Bois County. But with that, the consultants had to incorporate into the study what that might mean. And that also took extra time. I will tell you that that extra cost is being borne by NDOT, not by the RDA. We proposed and they very quickly accepted the proposal, said, hey, it's all well and good, but we hadn't factored that into our estimate when we looked at what the cost of this study is going to be. We now are looking at a completion date late this year. If it goes according to everything else, it could fall over into early next year. But the timeline should be that the draft environmental impact study comes out yet this month. And I think everything's on track for it to do that. From our understanding, it's currently under review at the Federal Highway. And once that review is complete, then it will be published in the Federal Register, and Bill's going to talk a little bit more about that. So that gives you some background on kind of how we got here.
Yeah, I think, and to recap on Mark's point, we had a not to see price of $6.5 million. Unfortunately, the delays and stuff did cause increased costs, but NDOT is absorbing those costs. So we're capped at the cost that we agreed to with NDOT, and NDOT agreed to with Lockmuller. So to the extent Lockmuller has additional costs, which they do, significant additional costs, those costs are going back and being paid by NDOT. So we're not coming back to you nor any of the other member agencies or the private contributors to ask for more money at this point. So we are going forward with what we have. You have a handout, but not to go through all the handout. You've seen some of these slides before. We're kind of just here to remind you what's going on because we're so close to what's happening. And that is, we do fully expect to see a recommended route in April this month being announced and being published. This is a federally funded project, potentially, depending on what happens, which is meaning they'll publish it in the Federal Register, which all federal projects across the United States have to be announced in. And then NDOT will be making an announcement of the route recommendation. Following that recommendation and that announcement, there will be public hearings, at least 2 public hearings somewhere along the route. And then there'll be regional meetings, just like they did last time. They'll be talking to regional leaders and working through those questions. And then they'll take the next 6 months basically to receive information, absorb that information, and take it into consideration as to how it might change a final route determination. That'll happen over 6 months. And so we say that it gets announced sometime in April. They have hearings, have meetings. We'll take written information electronically. People can mail things in. There'll be a website, a location to submit information, comments, questions, issues that the public might have, the landowners might have, that government organizations might have. You may have counties, cities, businesses, whatever those organizational questions are. They'll take all that information back in. They are required by law to understand and respond to all those issues and questions so that people do have a forum to speak and talk about the questions they have about the recommended route. We did want to go through briefly with you the charts. These are charts that Lockmuller had. As you may remember, this Mid-States corridor is looking at an improvement of a north-south logistical corridor, right? And basically in the instance that we have issues and questions running through Du Bois County about traffic, right? How traffic goes through. Nobody has to tell you guys the traffic issues we have for Huntingburg and Du Bois. So this is starting at the river. The Mid-States corridor study area really went along 231, starting at the river through Spencer County. And you can see that there's really no alternates in Spencer County about where that would go. It would run through Spencer County following 231. And then when we get to Interstate 64, that's when our alternative routes come through. We started out with 10 alternatives, 10 routes, 20 alternatives a route. We are now down to 5 routes, 10 alternatives. And this is Du Bois County primarily, where you're seeing a route coming back through. And so either back up 231, kind of a western route, a further western route, and then a potential eastern route. Routes going either on the west side of Huntingburg and Jasper or the east side of Huntingburg and Jasper. And then a bigger map of the routes coming through from a bigger picture where you can see now fully the eastern routes that would follow through up to 37, then up to 69, another route following along 450 through Orange County up to 37 and through, and then these 2 routes, which are primarily following 231 and then 2 potential western routes. So that's your 5 different routes. And then just a little bit, to the extent that an eastern route was selected, there's a little more detail about what those eastern routes look like. What we expect is that, when the decision comes through, is that there'll be a decision about how this roadway will get improved. As you may know, and we've stated that they've told us the same way in this process, the whole continuum is no recommendation that your existing structure covers what you have and you don't need any improvements. To improve your existing structure, to take your existing road structure and add new terrain or whole new terrain. There's a whole continuum that happens. We'll see in this route recommendation when it comes out, again, expecting in April, about what Lockmuir is proposing to NDOT and ultimately to the RDA and the organizations, the communities, about how this traffic issue can be addressed from a safety standpoint, from availability standpoint, through that piece. And that's when we'll have a discussion over the next 6 months about what that looked like or could look like. As to the next steps, right? So once the tier 1 route recommendation gets done, that's a draft EIS. We'll take 6 months. Hopefully at the end of the year, we'll have a final EIS. That's all a tier 1 circumstance. Tier 2 circumstance would be then moving forward and acting upon whatever those recommendations are, which could be improving 231. It could be looking at new terrain. So we'll see. Tier 2 won't move forward without funding. And so that'll be an issue or question about how that second phase or phases could be funded or improved. And depending on the route and depending on what happens, that could happen in that tier opportunities could happen in different phases. There could be improvements in Spencer County. There could be improvements in Orange County or Martin County or Du Bois County. We'll see how that gets broken up after a final route gets recommended. One other thing that is discussed, and you saw on here, and these routes, there are designations of expressway or freeway, Super 2. When Lockmuir originally put these charts together, they were looking at the possibility of what kind of facility would be used or could be used on these routes. What's subsequently turned out is a matter of funding wise, this route recommendation will not have a facility type designation. So it won't say that it should be a Super 2 or expressway. It'll just propose a route. At tier 2, when they do further study, they'll make a determination as to the type of facility that section of the route should have. So that's something to become. And one of the questions that came up was, is you have to constrain the dollars if you're going to move forward with that, if you know what the type of facility is. As you can imagine, there are different costs associated depending on the type and size and sophistication of the roadway. So this allows this process to go forward without making that constraint or determination now until it's really studied and determined as to the type of roadway that ought to be in each or any part of these sections. So just so it's clear that if somebody asks, is that a Super 2? We don't know, right? We don't know. We will know a roadway, a route, and have an opportunity move forward for people to talk about it over the next 6 months.
One point I would add to, Bill, one of the decisions that did come out of this tier 1 study, I always get these messed up, Bill, but it won't be a freeway. It won't be an interstate. That has been dropped. At this point, it's between the expressway, which is limited access divided for, or Super 2, or improvements to the existing road. Other comment that I would make from the RDA's perspective is that, and we all know, there are people out there that are advocating for this road. There are people certainly that are advocating against this road. And because we are, as the RDA, a part of this study, we necessarily, it would have been the prudent thing to do even otherwise, we've not been a proponent for any particular route or any particular roadway type. Our position has been that we've been appointed by the governmental entities to have a study done and see what, by an independent source, and see what that result is. And we're about at that point. Our assumption is at that point, and we'll confer certainly with the governmental entities, but our assumption is at that point, the RDA will pivot. Once it's announced what that route is, the RDA will pivot to be an advocate. We've been an advocate for improved connectivity, north-south connectivity, but not any route. We'll become an advocate for whatever that preferred route would be from this study. But again, that's what that time period is for.
Yeah, I think to improve our logistical problems, issues, and questions on 231. Right? I mean, that's the question, and to improve the access that we have as a county and that other citizens, other parts of the country have to Du Bois County, right? I mean, that's the question and issue. I mean, we have a major traffic problem. The question is, how do you fix the traffic problem in Du Bois County? And so that's the expectation, is that the study that Lockmuller, the $6.5 million, the study that's happened will identify ways to improve the flow of traffic north and south through our county and to the adjoining counties that are in the Mid-States Corridor study. So with that, I would expect that, we will be back probably shortly, in the next 60 days or so, to come back and talk and answer questions after the route recommendation gets made. There'll be public hearings probably very quickly, within 30 days or so after this recommendation happens. And then, we'll be back to answer questions that you may be receiving, and or from your constituents, issues, questions, or you may have about process.
Do you have an idea of what level of detail will come out of the Tier 1 and even sooner the draft version of Tier 1? You've already addressed the route type, expressway, Super 2, that sort of thing. But these routes have a 2-mile wide path going through here.
Correct.
Well, and that, my understanding is that Tier 1 would narrow that down to quarter of a mile.
2,000 feet.
2,000 feet.
Yeah.
Will that happen? Will we see that in the draft, or will that not come until the end of the study?
That's our understanding.
Our understanding, it will be in the draft.
It'll be in the draft.
Yeah.
The public will be able to see at those public hearings. They will have maps, much like they did initially, of that 2,000 feet, and they'll be able to determine either online or at public hearings, okay, how does this affect me?
Yeah.
Now, what they won't know, because the eventual right-of-way, we're told, will be 300 to 500 feet. So,
Yeah, 2 miles to 2,000 to
And then that may
300,
depend
yeah.
on the facility type.
right, and that'll come in the Tier 2.
And the location too, Homer. I think one of the things we understand, Brett knows better, when you put roads up, whether you're at an intersection, you need more road, or you have an access road on the side, depending on how, when you're redoing things. And that would probably also presume either new terrain, or you're redoing 231 or part of 231 or whatever that may be. So that's the question.
Stream fills or cuts, right?
Yeah, right. So I think they've been cautious to say, because other people have asked the same question: when am I going to know, the route, and how, even if I know the route, whether I'm covered or potentially covered by the route. And you're right, it's 2 miles to 2,000, and then depending on when Tier 2 comes around for the section that they may be impacted by, is it 300 feet, 500 feet, or somewhere in that area?
So that'd be, would the right of way be 4-lane right of way? I understand it's not gonna be a 4-lane interstate.
I don't know if we can answer that question either. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
again,
yeah.
Tier 2 would decide whether it's going to be an expressway, which would be something similar to existing 231 south, maybe with a little better intersections, or if it's a Super 2, or is it an improvement of existing 231, in which case it'll be all the above, and theoretically even whatever route they choose, they have said could very likely be mixed. One section might be 4-lane, one section might be Super 2.
Yeah, Lockmuller said, I think Lockmuller said, commented generally, public, that depending on the study and the way it looks out, that it doesn't have to be the same facility type the whole way through. It could be a different facility types depending on the traffic for different sections. And at least, the traffic numbers that we saw in the Hunden report showed that there was fairly heavy traffic through Du Bois County, and north at the intersection between 231 and Crane, and then north in Orange County at the intersections, in Lawrence County, where 37 drops off before it comes south. That there were very heavy traffic in those areas too. So depending on the route and the location, the facility type could change to accommodate the traffic and the growth of the traffic, right? Which is part of the question. I mean, we're here not only to try to resolve our traffic issues that we have, but to make certain we're covering those traffic issues for generations to come for our community and our county.
Any other questions?
Look forward to the next few weeks.
Yeah, as do we. Yeah, it's been a long time coming, and I know that there's been a lot of patience by our government sponsor organizations, as well as citizens who are waiting and trying to understand what this would look like. And so I think we're real close to moving on to the next steps.
Appreciate all the time and effort you're putting into it, as everybody else is.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there's a lot of folks. We're here talking, but there's a lot of folks putting a lot of time and effort in. Both are as NDOT and in its project managers and other people who are concerned or questions about what this is going to look like.
Yeah. Good. Well, thank you.
Thank you
for
very
the
much.
opportunity.
Before they step away, in case you had a question directed at them, but as Mr. Schrader pointed out, the board was originally appointed 4 years ago, and that term is set to expire here in the near future. There's an agreement between the parties being the four executive bodies of Spencer County, City of Jasper, City of Huntingburg, and Boyce County, to reappoint those 5 members for your consideration. My understanding that the other 3 entities have approved this already.
Yeah, the reappointment of the same board members for another 4 years.
Anyone have any discussion on the members? Hearing none, I move that we approve the agreement to appoint the board of the Development Authority. We'll leave it as it is.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Anything else, Mr. Schneider?
No, thank you.
All right. Thank you for your time.
Have a good day.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, just, I want to be respectful of the commissioner's time. I know you have a lot of on the agenda today and stuff. I didn't know if there was time for public comment.
We'll do public comment at the end of the meeting.
At the end, well, in that case, because I can't stay, I do have a written statement I can share with the commissioner.
Do you want, I mean, unless it's very long, if you want to leave it, I will read it for you at the end of the meeting.
Okay, that's fine. I'll do that.
You can approach and hand it up if you like.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again, just for anyone in attendance, we always do have a public comment section at the end of the meeting. So anybody can speak for 3 minutes at the end of the meeting, or if they want on the agenda, they can get 15 minutes.
Yeah, we were on the agenda.
Okay. On the same issue?
No.
Okay. Okay. All right, well, thank you, and, yep, I'll read that at the end of the meeting.
Thanks.
You're welcome. And next up, we have the service award discussion. Commissioner Bronson and I discussed this at the last meeting briefly. I sent information to both of the commissioners previously, and wanted to see Commissioner Hostetter, basically, if you had time to review that, if you had any comments on at least what we had so far.
You just want to bring me up to speed? I can try to find my email, but.
Yeah, I was gonna try to find the emails as well. In short, I put together some just general draft and overview of what this could potentially look like, and want to get feedback before I formalize it in any way.
Yeah. I think you're on the right track here, Chad. I did review those. I was looking at it as a service award for our employees. I didn't know what change was being made, but I think this looks good.
Commissioner Brahms, was there anything else that you,
And not since the last meeting, I think I commented there that I agree too, that it's a good start. There may be some tweaking to it by the time we get finished with it. I think I mentioned that I'd be interested in finding a unique, appropriate name for the award. I think that would go a long way to make it special. So,
all right, so since there's nothing glaring that stands out from either of you, I'll just formalize it a little further and bring it up again at the next meeting.
Okay.
So if we can have this for 10 minutes at the next meeting, please, Sandy. We will just continue the process. Thank you. Next up, we have surplus items and cell phones, Mr. Warner.
So things you get earlier for this year?
No, it was there.
Thank you. Yep.
So today, you have a list in front of you. I just brought, we have some unsalvageable items and some surplus items. I have photos of everything if you want to see them. I didn't bring a whole list of print off because I didn't want to waste the paper, but this is, the top list is unsalvageable. Most of them are broke, unusable. And then the surplus, if anybody in the county is wanting them to use in their office, they're more than welcome to. I can send a list out with pictures in an email after this if that's what you want us to do. And just to clarify, the file cabinets at the bottom, or the filing cabinets at the bottom, 13, 2, and 4, those still have records in them, but as we deplete them, we want them declared now. So I have to come back every single time I have the cabinet because we went with the EHR. So we're taking all of our immunization records and scanning them in. As we empty a file cabinet, it's not needed for us anymore. We're trying to gain that space is what we're trying to do.
As far as the condition on them, they are still functional. They modify to look okay.
They're just black, 7 drawer, 5 drawer, and 4 drawer, and then there's there's 1 2 drawer that is available right now. Typewriters, there's an iPad or tablet stand that somebody could use in a different office. It's in good condition. We just don't have a need for it.
You don't have any use for 2 typewriters?
We went with electronic references. We're trying to get away from paper, so we still do have 2 that work if somebody wants one.
You still do need them occasionally. I mean,
Well, we used to too, but we used to do all our immunization records with typewriters because we put them on charge. Hence why we have 2,700 5x8 manila envelopes. So, we don't want to throw them away if somebody can use them, but they're of no value to us anymore. And we're trying to consolidate space because obviously our situation out there.
Yes. Well, let's do these. I would say we do these in 2 parts. Let's go with the unsalvageable top part. I would move that we declare the items number 1 through number 7 as junk to be discarded.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. And then our practice has been to take pictures of things, send them out in an email, and then once you have the things claimed that you have claimed, we'll just determine how you do the rest of it.
So give it a week, 2 weeks, and then if they're not claimed, then what do you want to do with them?
Then you bring us an updated list. You just email it to us. You don't have to go here again.
And at that point, discard it or
At that
have
point,
an
we'll
auction?
make a determination. In other words, like if some of these things have value, I'm sure the coffee table, for example, if it has some value or use to the community, we'll either donate it to the Restore or St. Vincent's, or we can, if there's a lot of value in anything, then we can try to sell it.
And for instance, if one of the file cabinets is broke that we don't know about, then that would be unsalvageable at that time.
if we declare it that way.
Okay, got it.
Yep, so at this point, just get rid of the stuff that's clearly junk, give it to the next meeting of seeing if other people need this. I mean, vanilla file folders, people may need those, or clipboards, I don't know. But then we want to work with you to get rid of the things we don't need, but we don't want to throw anything away that has value.
I get it. All right, and then next item is we have 6 cell phones in the health department. One is currently broke, the screen's cracked. And we have money in the budget for this year to purchase new ones. And I talked to Sandy, she said that she figured that I need to come ask for that, and then what you want us to do with the 6 cell phones once we purchase new ones. What's the process to start those? Do we?
What are the old ones? Are they, I mean, what generation are they? Are they?
They're S10s, and then there's one iPhone.
I went on our site yesterday to see the cost of new replacements, depending on what you want. The Samsungs can be anywhere from $40 all the way up to $319.
For a replacement
For
phone?
replacement phones, depending on what version model you get. Most people have been, if they get the iPhones, they've been getting the 99 cent.
There's 5 Samsung S10s, and then there's one iPhone.
Is there a reason why you choose one model over another? What are you using them for?
Past administrator chose an iPhone. We normally stuck with.
Hers is here, her one of these. Most
Doubt
of
it.
it's from 911, I'm
No.
getting from EMS.
We're still using the iPhone as
Charles Fairs.
a hotspot for when we go out and do inspections.
So you, I mean, there's not a program with one that you can't get on another or anything.
Well, I mean, there
If you have
is.
internet and you have email
It
and
was
telephone
just
calls.
a past administrator's preference that she use an iPhone.
I mean, as long as they're smartphones that will do the functions that you need, get the least expensive ones. I mean, there's no, she said, do your preference. I say, don't do your preference, do the one that will make the job.
Well, when I meant preference, I meant Samsung or
iPhone.
versus iPhone.
Yes, but we've run into the past where we get the base cheap model and they don't always do what we need them to do. They give us issues.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Find the cheapest one that does what you need.
Yeah. Because we
We
ran
don't need
into
to
that.
get the $400 one when one of the other ones.
Yeah.
And you said you already have a budget for this technology budget? Or you
We have 2 of them funded out of preparedness, which is mine and the other backup preparedness coordinator. And then we have the other 4 out of local health maintenance or trust, one or the other. So it's not coming out of county money, it's coming out of grant funding.
Okay.
And we have it budgeted for this year. I don't know what next year is gonna look like, so I would try to get them, before the end of the year. Preparedness has to be done by June, and local health maintenance and trust is by the end of the year. And I try to keep all 6 of them on the same recycle, so I don't have one here and there, it just kind of gets messy.
Sure. Any questions for Mr. Warner on this issue?
Have you checked into trading the phones?
They
AT&T had a trade-in just
They're not on
recently.
AT&T, they're on Verizon.
I don't, they normally
But
don't.
I'm just saying, Verizon might have the same thing.
I have not talked to our rep. I just went on the website and saw
Okay.
it.
But if we have phones available for 99 cents or $40, I don't think we're gonna get them any cheaper than that.
Right, I understand. I'm saying the surplus phones, the 6 that you're getting rid of, probably have value somewhere.
When you weren't here at the last meeting,
Something.
I was gonna say, there was some computers, I don't know what happened to them. Did Casa
They're
bring
still
them?
not brought up to us yet.
So Casa has some computers, and I said, bring them to me, I'll look into seeing if we can get paid for them. I would do the same thing with this one.
So you want us to factory reset them and bring them to you
Yes,
after we get them switched?
yes, after they're retired.
Because, I mean, it might not be a lot, it might be $50 to $100 a piece, but it's not nothing.
And that's what I was telling the Casa people last time. I'll look into it. If it's overly burdensome, we won't do it, but if it's not too burdensome, I'll send them in and get some money for the county.
Okay.
So, yep, you can deliver them to myself or the auditor's office. We'll do it from there.
All right, and I got one other item that I didn't have on the agenda, but it won't take long. I got a new employee, Jack Mendel. He has 4 days of vacation or PTO time because he's a new employee. He is going to be taking a family vacation June 13th to the 17th, which is 5 days. He is requesting, or I'm requesting for him, one of those days unpaid, so he can take a family vacation with his family. He doesn't want to come. He can't come back on the 5th day basically because he's going to be doing out with it.
Will it negatively impact the functions of your office to have a member gone for that extra day?
No.
Any thoughts from the board?
Yeah, no, I'm good. Good with it.
I'll move that we approve the request for 1 day of unpaid time off for the employee.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else you need from me?
No, sir.
Not him, but I was with our new interpreter,
Yes.
I was gonna request that that person have a cell phone, and it's new to the plan, so instead of having a
We need
desk phone, they need something to be contacted with.
I think it makes perfect sense. If they're gonna be
They're
moving from
going to
office
be
to
moving
office.
around, they need to be contacted.
then we wouldn't add a, desk phone. It'd just be cell phone or.
So that's even only.
Probably be comparable in price to having a desk phone, you know, long term, so.
Well, a desk phone's only good if
If you're there.
If they're there.
Okay, I'll move that we approve the request to add a cell phone for the translator pending county council funding of the phone.
I'll second.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
When is that application, Marky, when is that closed?
It is like the 15th, I believe.
Okay, that's
Oh,
good. That's good.
It's a Friday. Yeah, 15th.
All right, next up, we have Veteran Service Officer update. Last week, Mr. Rhodes, myself, and Veteran Service Officer Gary Love conducted interviews for this position. There were 2 candidates that I believe, Mr. Rhodes, if I say anything out of turn, please correct me. We were really impressed with the candidates that we interviewed, and I think we have a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners of who we would recommend. The goal would be to bring on one of these folks, let them work with Mr. Love over, at a minimum, a couple week period. So there may be a funding issue at the end of the year that we could run short a little bit, but I think it makes sense to let the new person shadow the existing person, especially since he's been doing such a great job and things are going in the right direction to help that transition. I think that's something we would probably potentially address later in the year. We could also potentially use the funds that we're getting from the Community Foundation to help with those wages. So I think we're probably going to be in a pretty solid position with the office. Again, I was excited about both of the candidates. If either one of them would have been the only one that came in, I would have been pretty satisfied. And if you remember, Gary was saying too that we are understaffed in that office. He compared us to other counties, and he said that at our last time he was in front of us that our caseload is comparable to what Vanderbilt County is doing, and they have triple the population. So it's possible that we would have the need, according to Gary, of to basically a full-time position is how I would look at it. And my goal for this office would be possibly hire one of these 2 people initially, let them get their feet under them, and if the other applicant wanted to come in 1 day a week or something, we could at least explore having a little more staffing in that office. Generally, I don't like bringing people on, but this is important, and we're heading in the right direction. And every veteran that we help brings more dollars into DuBois County, and it's just the right thing to do. So with this, I think I would recommend to the board that we would hire Susan Bramlett for the the position of Veteran Service Officer. And the other applicant that we interviewed was Daryl Hensley. And again, awesome, excellent. I'd be happy for either. But I think partially too, Mr. Hensley was someone who 3 full days a week wasn't necessarily what he wanted anyway. So I think it would fit him pretty well if he could come in and help a day a week or 2 days a week or something. So I think we may be in a very good position with that office moving forward if we were lucky enough to get both of these people to help us in that area.
No, I think that's the right way to proceed. You know, we've had a discussion about 2 part-time positions, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Monday, Friday, however they would divide that up. But it'd be good to get one person in first and get that organized and get them moving, and then bring the second one on at some point, maybe ease them in.
And well, the other thing I think about that too is this new person may come in and feel differently than what Gary does and say, we can keep progressing in the office, but I can do that.
Right.
Or yeah, I'm not sure what they would do, but yes,
Sure,
you're right.
no, let them come in and make that determination.
And again, Mr. Love has done great. He's, a couple Thursdays ago, we had another community outreach event that was well attended by local veterans. And I spoke to a veteran this weekend who said they were disappointed that he was leaving because he did such a great job. And yeah, we all are. But things have changed. So, anybody have any questions or comments about those candidates that I mentioned? And again, I guess my recommendation to the board, and my motion would be that we offer the position conditionally upon administrative processing to Susan Branley for Veteran Service Officer role.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? Any other from Mr. Rhodes?
No.
Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. So, Mr. Rhodes, will you reach out to both of them?
Yes. I'll close the loop and go ahead and get the process going on with Susan and get a start date set.
Oh, excellent, thank you. HR attorney update, Mr. Rhodes.
All right, so this is follow-up from last week. So I've got basically three choices here. Mr. Freiberger, he's switched firms, Nick, so just to kind of catch you up. So he's proposing a new retainer agreement for the county at $300 per month for the retainer fee. He's with Barber and Bauer, attorneys, a law out of Evansville. So, so with that, I actually did a little bit of research with some different firms that I've used in the past. Ogletree Deckins out of Indianapolis. They do not have a retainer agreement. You only pay as needed, and their rates are going to be $300 or $450 per hour. So, Ice Miller out of Indianapolis, also no retainer, pay only as you need, and their rates are $300 to $650 per hour, depending on the level of attorney that you get. Ice Miller does represent several municipalities in the state of Indiana. Also, the conversation was, does Mr. Freiberger do per hour versus per month? He will as well, and his flat rate is $300 per hour. So pretty well the trend is $300 per hour. So if we go that route, I did give Greg a copy of the agreement that Mr. Freiberger had typed up for the retainer side. We would obviously get this thing updated because it is out of date. Was there any concerns in there, Greg?
There was not, no,
Okay.
just the date started.
Pretty straightforward. So,
Yes, sir.
of course, been with Mr. Freiberger before I came on board. We've not had any issues with his service. Anytime we've ever needed him, he has been there for us. So I would be on board with keeping him as a resource if that's what we want to do.
If we keep him, if we put him on retainer, is there an upper limit as to how much we can use him?
it's that gray area. Yeah, he said if it gets into, if we would have a suit or something like that, it would obviously be more. But the general things that we've used him since I've been here, it would just be the continued $300.
I know you don't call him that often, but if you were to call him once a week, is he okay with that?
For the year contract, he said, that would be fine. And of course, like anything, we look at the usage of the year and adjust. But I don't look at that number go down because I think we only used him a couple times last year. So
Then it comes down to, if we use him 12 times, if you call him 12 times, it's a wash.
correct.
Do you want that ability to have the flexibility to do that, or every time you need him, you think, oh, it's gonna cost another $300?
Correct. Yeah, that's almost like insurance. It's something you pay for and hope you never need, but you're glad you have it when you need it.
Now, that's my concern too, is it gonna be, if we have him under retainer, then we're comfortable to use him as needed. If it's, well, should we really call for this question? It's gonna cost us $300 to find out. It's just a.
Correct.
Either way, I think, Mr. Schneider, you've been happy with Mr. Freiberger.
I have been, and I think he has a good understanding, again, having originated here in the county. He has a good idea and a good feel for Du Bois County and what our mindset and our priorities are. And anytime he's given me an opinion, he takes that into consideration, which I appreciate.
I guess I would definitely lean on staying with him one way or the other, the retainer or the per fee. Mr. Chair, what do you think? Do you use him in addition to the times that Mr. Rhodes uses him?
Since Mr. Rhodes has come on, my involvement with him has decreased. I would defer more to Mr. Rhodes on that. I have contacted him probably on 2 occasions over the last year, either following up on something that I was involved in or something separate.
And most of the time, if they have a $300 an hour fee, any contact an hour?
No, should not. Well, mine's not. I bill at the actual rate of time, and I know the county's different, but if it's a 25-minute phone call, then it's a quarter of an hour time. I know it's not a 1 hour minimum billable time.
Okay. I mean, if it's okay with everyone else, that sounds like the route to go. If we used him 4 times last year, we're half the money by.
In my opinion, it's easier to budget a retainer than it is knowing.
I think we'd have to budget for 12 months.
Right.
Just for budgetary purposes, because you don't know, but.
Right, and well, you do 1 hour a month, that's $300, right?
Correct.
Or right now, we could have more than 1 hour a month if we retain it.
Well,
That's
that's where my question came in, and I don't want to ever have either of you think, any of you think, oh, maybe I don't really need him, it's gonna cost a quarter of an hour, or whatever it's gonna cost. I don't want that thought to be a determining factor as to whether or not you.
I'm more thinking for budgeting purposes, do you put so
I
much in
suggest
there, or do you put?
You would leave $3,000 in there like we do now. That would give him 10 hours a year, which is probably triple what we used last year. Right? I mean,
Yeah.
It looked like the last phone call we made with him, how long was it? 20 minutes total that he may have spent on it?
Probably not even that.
Right, he's answered the question.
Yeah.
So I think I would have that concern if we were using it at least close to our budget.
Yeah.
But seeing that we're using it 4 times a year, probably less than 4 hours a year.
If we would go retainer route, I would, of course, we've been in the handbook, creation of the handbook for quite a while with all the different changes that's been going on and that, and I would probably, if we did a retainer, I would have him review that handbook. Well, I know we've had Wagner over and the Shealy review it as well, but since he would be the one to actually be representing us in anything, I wouldn't want to get a copy in his hands to let him.
We find a way to utilize the money.
Correct, if we was to do that. Otherwise, I won't do that because it would, cost us considerable to have him review that.
From the county council perspective, we have 2 members in attendance. Either of you have an opinion?
My opinion would be to have a retainer. I just think, like you just that statement right there, when you feel comfortable with turning that over to him and reviewing it, that could cost the county a lot of money if there's a mistake in there, or somebody would have an issue.
I think also the benefit of the retainer is, if you're on an hourly basis, you're not a priority, a priority client. If you're on a retainer, you pretty well, you make a phone call, and you're gonna get an answer pretty well immediately too. So I think that's important.
I'd be in favor of the retainer.
Ms. Beckman?
I agree. Retainer.
So at this point in the year, if we went that route, we have enough in the budget. So we have a $3,000 budget, so we got the last 3 months. I don't know, did you charge us for that last phone call?
No, he did not.
So,
Because he said while we're working on this, he said we'll just get this finalized and move forward. So he actually has it set for April 1st, and of course we've been, discussing this. So I'll have him get the date modified and that. So,
Mr. Mayor, would you give a thought?
Again, I think it's a good idea to keep him on retainer. The fact that, again, he would continue, he's a good partner for the county. To continue to provide a service, even though this was not in place. But that's the type of gentleman that Mr. Freiberger is.
On the handbook, we're paying people that have attorneys on staff, so I'm not concerned with that. If we need a second opinion on it, I don't want to pay for the same, opinion twice, but I guess it's not much of a difference either way, Mr. Hossetter.
I would agree. I think the retainer would be the right way to go. I'd encourage you to use him. If he's there, you got the expertise at your fingertips, use it. I think on an hourly rate, we would be discouraged from using it as often.
correct.
And I just, we'd be better out with the retainer for that reason.
So, budget time, you have to add $600 to the line item to make that happen. And I guess we'll need a contract that we will have to approve in the future, or do we have one that is?
I believe it's an engagement letter similar to
Yeah.
what we've done with other outside firms.
Are we prepared to review it as a board to make a decision on it, or do you just want to go with that?
Here's a blank copy. Like I said, it does have the April 1st date on there, but how important that is to change that or not. That's the.
Those funds are already budgeted, you said, correct, they're in place.
Correct.
I mean, I reviewed the
I
agreement.
mean, you've reviewed this.
I reviewed it, I believe it's
I'm
fine.
staying through it, but
And in all honesty, with regards to commencing May 1st or April 1st, we haven't used up that much of April at this point either. It can be effective as of
April 1st.
Yeah.
We've got him on retainer. That math still comes up under the $3,000 budgeted item.
yeah, I'm good with it. We've got the way it is.
In the face of 6 other people saying that they want a retainer, I probably still would go the other direction, just because it's a little less expensive. But I'll entertain a motion to accept this, if anyone wants to do so.
I'll make a motion that we accept the retainer with the law firm of Barber and Bauer, attorneys at law, for $300.
I'll second that.
In a second, any other discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Aye. Motion carries. I'll sign the agreement and we will begin with them immediately.
All right.
Bauer.
Just give that to Sandy.
There you go, Sam. All right, well, that's good. I'm happy that we get to stick with Mr. Freiberger. We've had a good relationship with him, so that works out. You might need a break before we go to Ms. Schnell. All right, Janet Schnell with Boss Teams. How are you today?
Good. Okay, if I approach.
Yes, please.
Janet Schnell, survivors of suicide in Du Bois County. We've been here for over 25 years, providing different services, and we've gone to different trainings. We've gone to different trainings to learn more about suicide prevention, intervention, and after suicide has occurred. And we came across a new program, not new, it's in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, an evidence-based program called the Lost Team, Local Outreach to Survivors of Suicide. And what we found through research is after a suicide death, about 4.5 years before someone will reach out for services, mental health services, support group, any kind of services to help after a suicide loss. And so we are working with the state of Indiana, who's provided a grant for us to be able to roll out a Lost Team here in Du Bois County. We're one of the first 11 areas in Indiana to be able to provide this service. And so yesterday we had the first training at Jasper Police Department in their training room, where we're going to have more people who are trained to be able to be a part of the Lost Team. It's all a volunteer service. It incorporates a mental health provider, a professional, and a lost survivor who go to the scene of a suspected suicide death. We stay on the other side of the yellow tape. We do not get involved with the police department crossing into the scene because they have to investigate it. As I said, it's a suspected suicide death until it's ruled that it's a suicide. So what we do is we hang out on the other side and we help the family members, the friends, the neighbors who are really lost, confused, traumatized, and we help them to understand what will happen next. More important, we provide the resources. So we have this, I actually have a bag of materials that we take along. It includes this, which has little pullouts. Inside, you will see also that it has a white paper of all the mental health providers that we have in Du Bois County and around Du Bois County. And we bring things around, things like a bottle of water, because especially in the summer, people become dehydrated. We know that during trauma, people have a difficult time even breathing. So we take a bag of mints along with us. And when people breathe in, suck on a mint, it actually helps increase their air passage. We leave things like a book that was written by lost survivors so that people can identify with maybe another mother or a sibling. We leave a candle. We also leave a journal. And so this is more of an informational, just letting you know what's happening here in Du Bois County. This is in response to, on July of 2022, the new 988 system will roll out. The 988 is like 911, but it's specifically for suicide. That if someone is having thoughts of suicide, someone is worried about someone's had a suicide death, they can now call 988. It will actually be official July. Right now it's an 800 number, it's a little bit longer. So the state of Indiana is really looking at what other services can they roll out, because apparently Indiana has a fantastic 911 system. So they're really looking at using 988 more as a crisis line. And so part of this right now, we have the direct connection with Katie Shook, who's our coroner, and she then calls us right now. But eventually it'll roll out to 988, that when they have anything that's suicide related, they will call this crisis team to be able to go to the scene of the suspected suicide death. But the state of Indiana is also going to be looking at rolling out other programs, like if there was a horrific car accident and a lot of bystanders. If there was maybe a rape, crisis connection would be involved with that. If there was a suicide attempt, another team would roll out with that. So this is the very first one to roll out for the 988 system, and Du Bois County was lucky enough to get that grant.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, Janet, thank you for letting us know that this was coming.
My information's on there, that if you all ever have any questions, any kind of concerns, things that you know, I want you guys to keep this book also, that if you know a lost survivor who could benefit from that, please pass it along.
So with this training that you had, who was the intended target of the training?
This
volunteers?
The first training with the volunteers. And so we're going to have 2 trainings, because we know that not everybody can attend the Sunday training. So we're going to roll out another training, and we're working with Life Spring in the hospital to be able to provide that along with the other mental health providers, clergy, that will be doing that.
And it is Survivors of Suicide has a Facebook page. I'm sure somebody wants to look for you to find a way. I mean, that'd probably be the simplest way for people to reach out if they'd like.
Yeah, and Instagram.
Did you have your volunteers in place pretty well, or are you still?
No, we have, the training yesterday provided all the volunteers in place, and that was the whole purpose, was to make sure we have everything done before July. So we are definitely in place, but we will continue to add more and more people to the group.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
That was it.
Well, thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have a couple minutes. I'm running through.
Give me time to read Mark's.
How are you guys this morning? Good? Good. Have a good trip down?
Not too bad.
Good.
I always take rain over snow or ice. So,
I don't care.
yeah, and of course sunny is always nice, but other ones.
I do. Someplace here.
I brought clean copies.
Okay. Well, we, of course, have signed these. So. And
Yes, good to see your face.
this one, you saw the latest on this one.
All right, nice to meet you in person as well.
City, and they had some things. Okay, we'll bring it up.
Right, I know her name very well. I run into in person. I quit wearing them about 5 years ago.
Here's the handbook.
Old age, nobody wear them.
The handbook, she retyped it for me. With Chad.
On top of it, yeah, well, I was
Yes.
that way too.
We need to sign this.
Yes.
She was having a chat over that.
Oh, that's-
So I stopped. Yes. I went to classes, just like back in kindergarten, so.
I have to read.
I know.
Stephen, how are you? How are you?
You gotta watch this behind your back.
Good.
We just have to hand it out to all these people.
Spring, summer.
Yeah, I never dreamed he was on this.
I never read these
I just
Bible.
dreamed he would write on it, so I didn't make another comment.
Did he need to sign it?
Yeah, it does.
He doesn't need to sign it. He goes.
It's nice to see you.
They still sign it.
It was approved, so I don't know. Greg,
You can sign it, you can write name behind it and yours.
you know, pilot for a year.
We approved it. Did you find it approved? We approved it.
We approved it.
That's how it works.
We were a group.
Yes.
We were a team.
If you were involved in a meeting one time, someone signing for one of the local board.
Yeah.
That's not kind of how it works.
Okay.
All right, we get back to it. It is, let's go a couple minutes until 10:15, but, let's see if there's any miscellaneous items that we can work on. I did see in the newspaper, I know we've had discussions on zoning previously, and there was looking back at 25 years ago, the zoning was brought to a vote locally and was voted down 4-3 by the county council. And just thought that was interesting. That's still an ongoing conversation still today.
The funding of it, it must have been the funding that was voted down by the county council. That would have been a commissioner decision otherwise.
It didn't really go into that. It just said that these three
I mean,
council people voted for it and 4 voted against it. So I don't know why
obviously, they
that
would have to fund the positions necessary to implement it, so.
And
That's why
along
we
that
work
same
together,
line,
right? That's why we work together.
on that same line, I I don't know, did either of you meet with EDP Renewables recently, the solar power people?
I met them briefly at the restaurant. They were in for coffee. They said they'd try to catch me the next day. So.
Well, that day you saw me in your restaurant, I was meeting with them. And so I'll just go over that for one moment here. The short version is that they have 1,000 acres in the Duff area under option, meaning they've contacted folks in that area, and those people, I guess they can take them up on that. They probably paid them something for the option, and then if they want to proceed with the project, they can sign a different agreement or contract with those people and put a solar park there where it would tie up their land. I don't remember if they said for 25 years, 30-year lease or something of that nature. So they're still working on that. They provided me some information, and it's just a process that is ongoing. One thing that I did want to bring up to our board for consideration and possibly ask Mr. Schneider to look into it. I didn't know if our board wanted to implement a simple ordinance of some sort saying that at a minimum, that solar projects require the consent of the commissioners, or wind power. If that's something that we were able to do, or willing to do. The Randolph County, they did a project up there recently, and it was a pretty large project. And anytime somebody reaches out to me, I try to look at local news to see who complained about it and what went wrong with it, to just get an idea of what roadblocks we could have if they were coming here. And I didn't see any from the Randolph County project, and I didn't really find anything negative about the company as a whole. So I'm not bringing this up because there's something wrong with this particular company, but just to be preventative medicine, I suppose. And when I met with those folks, they said, if you'd like to see a copy of the ordinance that they did up there, and one that we were happy with, that they could provide it. I asked them to do so. I haven't gotten it yet, but do we think that that's a good idea to implement something, at least some bare minimum standards?
I'm not sure if that's the answer. My concern with some of these solar fields and stuff is that they drop a bunch of posts and concrete and some farmland, and then they put their panels up, and they got a 25, 30-year lease. And at that point, if the equipment that they put out there is antiquated, then is there any kind of cleanup involved? What happens next? Are they just going to walk away from it in 30 years and let their panels sit? And whoever owns the land has to figure out how to deal with it. That would be my main concern.
The good news with that is the same as the bad news, is that they do things like a road bond. They do a bond on this project, but we see how that's turned out, where we've got road bonds that we can't collect on because they've done during the middle of bankruptcy. So that their project would be fully bonded in case they fold for the cleanup. But as we're seeing, sometimes you gotta fight to collect on those. So there are some safeguards. I asked the same question.
Yeah, I think all of those things are concerns, and I don't know how the new bill that just went through the legislature that Senator Messler sponsored, how that might affect us, and how our, I'll say, lack of zoning regulations in Du Bois County. And I'd be interested in hearing, not today, but at some point, hearing what our legal rights are in that area. The one place we do have some teeth, if you will, in it is if they were to come to us for any kind of an abatement, then we can apply certain restrictions on those.
Two things that they would want from us would be road use agreements, right-of-ways possibly, and abatements. So those, they definitely would want that. Mr. Mayor, you want to give us a little research, a little something for the next meeting? And
in the absence of zoning, what teeth or what authority do we have from an ordinance standpoint? Sure thing.
Maybe put 5 minutes on the next agenda for him to just give us a little feedback, please. I think this meeting today has gone pretty well.
Solar?
Yes. Potential solar ordinance. And hopefully by that time, the EDP folks will have sent me a copy of what they said they would send. Okay, I don't have anything else on that issue. Is anybody else? Cybersecurity pilot program? Good morning.
Good morning, good morning.
I'm going to correct a little bit. Did you get the email that I sent to you, that Stephanie had forwarded to me about this cybersecurity assessment?
I think so, yes.
Okay. So you're.
I don't know if you have gotten copies of that.
Yes, I think that's what I sent to them.
Yes, this looks good.
This is just a white paper explaining what we're doing. But anyway, my name is Stephanie Yeager. I'm Executive Director for the Indiana Association of County Commissioners, so it's good to see you guys. I'm joined here with Shatrice Mosley Romero, and she's with the Indiana Department of Homeland Security. She is co-chair with me on the Indiana Executive Council on Cybersecurity, local and state government committee. But she also serves as the executive director for the, I'll call it IECC, which is the Cybersecurity Council. So what we have a grant to do pilot programs in the state to gather some data to see the cybersecurity readiness in Indiana and what we might need as a state to move cybersecurity in a greater posture. But for this particular cyber security pilot program, we want to declare your community. We're going to also be working with hopefully the city of Jasper and school corporation, but to become a cyber ready community and have that designated. So I'm going to turn it over to Shatrice. She knows a lot more about cybersecurity than I do. But Shatrice, I'll let you introduce the program.
Thank you. So good morning. Thank you for adding this to your agenda. I really appreciated it. It's kind of exciting to be able to kind of be like in the local communities and actually finally starting to like talk to people about this and so on. I'd like to give you kind of a good understanding of what this means for like you guys and what this is going to mean for the community. I know this might be surprising, but sometimes the state doesn't work with locals very nicely. And I have seen that. I've been with the state of Indiana for probably longer than I thought I ever would be, but about 15 years. And I've worked in a variety of roles with Department of Revenue, Department of Local Government Finance, a lot of agencies that work in conjunction with local government, but also pass down things to local government. And I've seen definitely the fruits of good labor developing relationships, and I've definitely seen the, almost thou shalt and the coming down into, from the big hill, and then it doesn't seem to always work operationally, right? So I've learned a lot from that. I would say that in my role as cybersecurity program director for the state of Indiana, we really, at the IECC, the Indiana Executive Council on Cybersecurity, we have 250 people throughout the whole state of Indiana coming from every industry, every critical infrastructure, a lot of local government representation from a variety of areas, from Evansville to Gary. It really, truly, from my perspective as the person who leads that, it was not enough to have just people around Indianapolis be part of a small group. So that's why I did the whole large group thing, because really for it to be a state plan, a state approach, we really needed to understand the different types of communities we have in Indiana, right? And Indianapolis most certainly is a large city compared, but the way they work is honestly very different from the rest of everyone else. So I really don't like to base what we should do in local government based on what's close by. I really want to hear the frustrations and the challenges and everything that's happening on the ground in local communities, which is really, frankly, where a lot of my heart is. Now, I say that because I really want you guys to know how excited I am to do this, because I feel like when we talk about cybersecurity in local government at a state level or even a federal level, it typically comes with that's a tough one. Nobody can crack it. Because I would say a big problem that states do is they probably do a one-size-fits-all model, which just doesn't work. And it doesn't work for a variety of reasons. I'm sure all of you are well familiar with the many reasons when it doesn't work. But when it comes to cyber, I would actually say it really doesn't work because people approach cyber very differently. It's a very personal thing. You know, it's not exactly like that public access thing. I mean, people talk about cybersecurity, and when you have a ransomware attack, even in a government entity, it feels very violating. It feels very personal, and you're going through a lot of things in a crisis way that is not fun for any local government or any person or organization to go through, right? So seeing this over the many years that I've been in this role, we've worked really hard at the state level to develop a cyber hub website, to develop basic guides, to develop best practices as a starting point. But that was not where it should stop, right? And so now it's really now engaging the local communities and asking them, now that we have something to start with, right? Before, I kind of talk about we didn't have our own house in order as a state, so there was no way we could go down, even though some people wanted to. I'm like, there's no way we're going down to local governments and saying, how can we help you when we don't even know? We're still figuring things out ourselves. But after the last few years, we've really developed with these subject matter experts, so not Shatrice, not the state of Indiana, but through private sector, through public sector, through academia, through local governments, and the best practices that many do have in the state of Indiana. We've developed this cyber ready community pilot. And so basically here's the approach. The approach is, you know, when you hear about a cyber program coming down to local governments, typically people assume, and usually goes to the IT director or the IT company that you're using in the city, right? But when it comes to cybersecurity, it's the human firewall that's as much of a threat as it is the technology. So you can have, and this is not to invalidate any like person you're using or company you're using or your IT director, if anything, it's to support them better, because you can have really good technology, you can have good infrastructure, but if you're not having discussions at the every department level of a city, if you're not saying, hey, while office manager of the clerk's office, while you definitely, when it comes to the email process or the network and like that, yeah, that's the IT person, 100% agree with you. But what are you doing within your office to do cybersecurity training or to make sure that people are aware of what data they have on their laptop before they take it on vacation, right? Or, you know, or what if you have people leave your organization, you told HR, did you tell the IT person so they could take down their profiles, and now people can access your accounts or your network through unused profiles, which is a thing that happens a lot. And so being able to kind of go through the operational, more of the policy, more of the behavior management aspect of cyber is really about 80% of, honestly, cybersecurity. When we talk about ransomware, when we talk about malware, when we talk about phishing, it is all about somebody didn't update their computers, even if the IT person pushed it out, maybe they're not doing what they're supposed to do on their side, right? Or somebody, they don't have training, so they clicked that link, or they were spearphished, which means they know, for example, you guys are county commissioners, it's not hard to find. And so if they're following you on Facebook or they're following people connected to you on Facebook and they know you're on vacation, it's very easy to say, like, go to your finance person and say, hey, I'm on vacation. Here's a picture of me and my family, because they just take it off of the profile and say, but I forgot to send something to someone else. Can you give me some information real quick? I mean, these are the things that are happening day to day. And everybody at local government is being targeted because it's the easy target. I mean, they're no longer bad actors are no longer taking a lot of time on the Chase banks and those things. They're definitely still attacking them. But when they're talking about intel, it's much easier for them to get into local government and get ransomware to go through and also be paid a little bit at a time versus the really big ticket item that takes. More likely you have cyber people, so that's, you know, a no-go typically for them. So the risk there is a lot higher, whereas with local governments and even state governments, unfortunately, we are a lower risk, higher yields type of situation. So this is what the cyber ready community is. It is me working with the partners, public and private partners who have
volunteered for the last several years on this council, who have a passion for local government as well, and small and medium-sized organizations, and who want to be able to, for example, have, an insurance company sit down and talk to your point of contact in the county or the city level to talk about cyber insurance. What questions do you have, without the fuel of somebody trying to sell something, right? It's to be able to talk with your emergency manager and being able to understand that, like, while IT is not your job, you're super key if you get a ransomware and all your systems are down, because you are coordinating with our state emergency operations center. And if it doesn't go away, if you can't get your networks up, now you're having to possibly request assistance from the state or from the US DHS Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. And so all those resources are available in possibly even emergency funds if that was the bad day that we all hope not to happen, but it's going to happen. So really, this is a different approach. I really want to empower the departments and the areas of the county and the city. I want them to feel like they do know that they own a part of cybersecurity without necessarily being the IT ones and zeros person, and then be able to come together, communicate with each other a bit better. Because I've been in situations where we had a county or a city get a ransomware attack, and they're about to pay, or one case they actually did pay their ransomware, and later on they found out they had cyber insurance. But it's because somebody is not consistently making that a part of the conversation, right? Like, hey, is everybody, all the leads of the departments aware that we have this? So if something happens on your side, you know what to communicate with your IT person, you know who to communicate within the county, officials. I mean, what is your response plan? It's those kind of conversations that aren't getting done, because a lot of people are like, that's the IT person, but it's so much more than IT. It's really become a major operations change that we're needing to have. And so I'm hoping that Du Bois County can lean in with me on this. Give me your input. If something about this doesn't work, I want to know that, because as we develop a larger program at the state level, as more money comes in from the federal, what I don't want to happen is to not have your input now, be able to figure out relationship and have good understanding of how local government really works when it comes to cyber, and then be able to develop a fair, more empowering program instead of a top-down program, which unfortunately is sometimes the way it goes. But so that is what I have to say. I would like to answer any questions, and I also would like to ask a question of the commissioners on what keeps you up at night when it comes to cybersecurity, because I want to make sure we're addressing the things that may be a concern for you, something that you have heard maybe secondhand of, like, that's how they're getting into local governments, or maybe an office or department that you feel is more more likely to get hit because of maybe the type of information they have here. I mean, what are you guys worried about when it comes to cyber?
I'll say with just the thing you mentioned earlier, I mean, it's the human factor that people are gonna be the ones that'll make a mistake. We've taken some minor steps in that direction, but I think that when we send out some of the note before trainings and those kind of things, then people, myself possibly included in that group, it's like, okay. And then it's just kind of like it's a burden. It's something that you go through. You don't give it a whole lot of attention possibly. How do we, I guess a concern I would have is how do we make it that it's an important issue for people, not just a hassle that they got to check mark and do the bare minimum to get it done.
Yeah.
Because I think that happens sometimes.
It makes you feel better. I'm the cyber director for the state, and I at least 6 times a year get the reminder to do my cybersecurity training.
Right.
So I get it. I totally do.
Well, and after you've done it 3 years, you think, oh, this looks like the same video as last time. I already know all this stuff, and you kind of dismiss it after a while. So for a way to keep it fresh and meaningful to the employee, why would they, why should I care as an employee that I clicked the wrong email?
Yeah. That's a great question, though, and that is kind of the question that we're going to be talking with each of the departments is why should you care, right? So outside of, as long as IT is doing my job, your job, that's great. And they're like, well, actually, if you're taking care of if you have a staff of 10, you just focus on your staff of 10. So yes, they're doing their thing, but let's see what you can do to empower your staff to protect your stuff. But it is that click, and it's amazing. I will say that I've talked to departments, we've talked to departments, and we've had meetings, and they're all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, that would affect my yeah, as a manager, I do need to take care of that. But it seems so, I think, very black and white to people when it comes to cyber. Okay, well, that's my IT person, when really it's actually everyone's thing, to your point, of human factor. So.
I will back up a little bit and say that I appreciate you coming down and making this presentation.
Absolutely.
Stephanie brought this idea to me months ago, actually first, and then we talked a couple of weeks ago about it, and I think it's a good idea. But probably our questions this morning might be surrounding more what would be our responsibility in being part of this study. We realize in the end, we're going to get an assessment that's going to be very valuable to us, and it'll be valuable to you as you then try to bring that to the entire state. But what is our responsibility going to be in this? And we've got some people, we've got our EMA director back here, our clerk is here, and of course our auditor, and the three of us, we've got some council members here. We may have questions on that responsibility.
Yeah, that's a fair one, because one of the things I don't want to do is coming from the IECCs or even just my position at the state is I don't want to cause even more work. I mean, I recognize and respect and honestly very much empathize with the fact that many of your employees and the people who serve your community are wearing like 4 or 5 hats. I absolutely understand that. And so my expectation is if I'm able to have access to the key departments, and we have a list there with elected officials, K through 12, controllers, auditors, your IT person, management, emergency management, water, wastewater, if that's managed by your city, county, law enforcement, your courts, libraries, health department, contracts, clerk's office, energy, and communications. So if we're able to touch base with those and talking their language, right? So going to a water person and the operator and talking all IT, it's hard for them to make the connection that they actually have a lot of things there, right? But once you make that connection, what our hope is we're putting more efficient processes in place. We're giving them best practices, but it's with no expectation. That's the thing about this cyber ready community. It's really about that communication, education piece. And I really do believe, and I've done blogs and I've done presentations at local governments. I don't believe anybody in local governments just like, no, cyber's not important. I believe everybody thinks it's important. I think everybody sees the value in it. It's just they don't know what to do with it, right? And it's just like you have this big word of cyber and you have this big word of local government, and you're trying to merge the two, and it just doesn't work. And so my hope is spending a couple of hours with each of the departments on a monthly basis, really asking for that. And if they want to devote more time, that's great. I think, if they want to take on the torch and really go the extra mile, then I have the people to help them with that. If they're like, hey, I just want to learn more about it, I want to see maybe low-hanging fruit and those quick wins, then I want to provide those to them. And I really want the local government to be driving this. This is not something, and this has been a very deep thing for both of us, where we're like, we don't want to go down and say, thou shalt do this. We want to say, hey, here's the menu of things. Hey, you're already talking about it. You're already winning. Like, this is great. Most people aren't even doing that, right? And so, all right, what are the low-hanging fruits that won't take very much, like the no before, but how do you kind of incorporate some more engagement into that, right? And then working with your emergency manager and saying, okay, what's your cyber incident response plan? What's that look like? Okay, you're hiring somebody, or you already have one. All right, let's talk about maybe, do you want to help us, do you want us to help you do a tabletop with that, with the state? So that way, how you contact the state, or what do you need, right, out of that? And so it really is going to be driven a lot more by them, and not like, hey, we're requiring, 10 hours a week. That's not the way that I want to run this. I really feel like that is the problem typically when a state comes down. They're expecting that, not thinking, hey, everybody has these day-to-day jobs. But I do hope that there's a lot of really good tools out there that may help, one, protect your citizens even more, that are easy to integrate into your current processes and projects that maybe people aren't aware of, right? And that's kind of what I'm hoping to do, is just really connect the dots and those communication channels and then go from there and see where they want to go.
There's really no financial commitment.
No, if anything, you're going to be gaining access to resources, access to an assessment. That, by the way, is not going to be shared with me as a state. It's not like a state is looking over and seeing. It's really, again, it's what you guys want to share, working with our partner in Purdue with their national grant to provide K through 12s and counties and cities a full assessment with remediation steps. So it's not just like, hey, you don't want anybody to be like, hey, you're not doing well, and then just walk away. We don't want that either, right? We want to be able to match those resources.
Or if you're doing really well, for us to glean, information on what's working well in local government too.
Exactly.
Definitely. And the assessment is protected by open door laws. So that's not something that we share.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because that's,
right,
security for your county.
And much of our discussions on cybersecurity and the details of any of the way your networks are and stuff like that, none of that would be accessible. We have a very specific one with even my role of talking with cybersecurity, and it protects everything. But yeah, I mean, are there any other questions then? Is that takes care of the time, and then there's a lot of things we'd be getting: an assessment, cyber incident response plan, training, exercise, education, connections with people in the fields. Again, like kind of that example of like, you have questions about cyber insurance, let me just connect you with the person who's been volunteering on the council for 4 years because they just want to provide information on cyber insurance, not selling it, to be a mentor really through those things, because those are really hard conversations. And again, nobody has time to go and just get a degree in cybersecurity. We're all trying in our role and trying to do what we can and do the best that we can. So
ultimately, I would like it to see where, we have an LTAP, which is the Local Transportation Assistance Program. I would like to have a CTAP, a Cybersecurity Technical Assistance Program that local units can use as a resource. So
yeah, and there is $1 billion, like literally $1 billion coming down from the federal in the next year specifically for local governments and their cybersecurity efforts. Now the state's still trying to figure out that strategy and how that is. I really hope that working with Du Bois County, working with Jasper, we're hoping to be with 5 communities, that we can inform that large program and how that money should be considered divided and the type of requirements that that counties and cities have to go through, that they're relatively easy. They're not a bunch of hoops that sometimes the state also likes to put you guys through. And really it makes sense for everybody who's getting that assistance. And I really, again, I want this to be one of those things where we inform them together, not just, just us guessing. I don't want that to be the case either. So
if we decide to go ahead with this pilot program, how does it start? What's the time?
Yeah, great question.
Period, months or?
Yeah, absolutely. So it'll be very much. We can start right away as far as just me having getting points of contact and starting conversations with department heads, just to see where they're at and what they want to know and what their interest is too, right? I mean, if they're in there and they're like, hey, I'm already doing this. I imagine, for example, clerk's office, if she wants, but they work a lot with Secretary of State, and Secretary of State's been hitting them hard with cybersecurity, so they're probably good. But just touch base with them, make sure that there's any challenges or anything that they want outside of the Secretary of State stuff, because obviously they do way more than elections. And then doing that with the sections, and then being able to kind of collect and be able to share information freely between the departments. And support your IT, manager or talking with them and kind of making sure that you guys are covered across the board. And if not, then how can the state provide those resources that may need gap resources? So I would imagine this is probably going to be about a 6-month, I would hope a 6-month thing, because again, we want to be able to do this in an efficient way and then still be able to provide our recommendations to the state as they develop their large strategy program, which then I think will put you guys in the front, not only from the state, but I will say that on a national level, we're already getting a lot of attention in Indiana because we do have such a strong structure in place at a state level with the IECC And again, that's because we have local government representation all throughout the state. However, you know, I want to be sure to, you know, excuse me, with regards to the national and even international, but national specifically, other states are looking to Indiana to see how we do this. So, you know, as Du Bois County, as Jasper, we could also be part of something that really makes a difference, not just for our local communities here, but across the nation. Because other states are struggling way more than we are, but they're struggling a lot when it comes down to state resources to local governments for the same reasons we talked about, right? And so they're like, hey, let's see what Indiana can do with doing this kind of more grassroots empowerment, working with you guys, and not just coming down with just direction and just expect you guys to do it or not do it, which I don't want to do.
So we would want something, you know, formally in your minutes that you would approve us to start the pilot program in your county.
Mm-hmm.
And if you need something additional from us, we'd be happy to.
Tammy, do you have any thoughts or anything on this pilot program?
I just wanted to let you know that we have just recently been awarded, we're already starting this process without even being a part of this pilot. This will only enhance it and make us better. You know, I know I'm prejudiced, but Du Bois County is always ahead of the game anyway. And we just were recently awarded a grant of $34,000 to help us with cybersecurity for Du Bois County, which will write our plan for us. Because I don't want to write the plan. I want, you know, everyone to help write that plan. And so that's the point of having, you know, the grant to help us with that. So, I mean, I support this. I think that it will only help us. But again, we're already starting. So, I mean, I think that's only going to help them as well as all of us in Du Bois County. So.
Other commissioners?
I know that Sandy may have some, because that your office will be key to a lot of it as well.
Yeah, Sandy and I work hand in hand.
Exactly. When Elmer brought this to my attention, I talked to Tammy right away and I said, I think we've got some help.
Yeah, because we've both been working very well together, trying to figure out what the right thing is to do, and so this is only going to help all of us.
You know, we've got cyber insurance, we've got the dual, we've got the Nova 4, but what don't we have that we could do as well?
And the idea of the state coming down and helping Du Bois County, 1 of 5, to do a cybersecurity tabletop exercise. I've been asking for that since 2020, and then COVID took over. So, you know, I think that it's only going to benefit Du Bois County. In small world, with that grant, I would have gotten your name anyway. And for the last 3 years, I've been working with anybody who's gotten a cyber grant just to make sure they were connected with all the resources anyway. So yeah, so we were just awarded it. So we're just getting started.
It's kind of perfect time.
Yeah, it really is.
For the record, I'll make a motion that we approve joining the cybersecurity pilot program as it's been presented.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? Any other comments? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? The motion carries. So if you say you have a written agreement of some sort that we need to review?
I was gonna actually ask you guys as far as what you like. I didn't want to be the state that's like making, I mean, I think this is a relationship and it's a trust thing. And so I'm, you know, unless you want that, I'm happy to put that together. But I also, you know, want it to, like, you know, I generally mean what I said, and I really want this to be a trust relationship. So if you prove it, it's your minutes, that's good enough for me, unless you guys want anything else. And if there are any departments who have a sensitivity to information, we will have an NDA, so that'll help them feel sensitive or feel comfortable with any sensitive information like that. But again, so much of it's going to be high level. I don't really see that to be an issue. And the assessment will be separate and won't be shared. That'll be with Purdue, and I think they sign an NDA with IT people. So
Non-disclosure.
Yeah.
As long as you stick to what's on the piece of paper you gave us in the discussion today, I don't think we'll have a problem with it.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think, you know, as far as the contract is concerned or anything like that, I mean, if we suddenly fail to cooperate, that's our way out of the.
Yes.
You know, but
we can ask you to stop showing up anytime, right? I mean,
that's gonna be awkward, but okay.
It will.
I'll bring candy.
I don't anticipate that, but I'm just saying, I don't know that there's any, because contractual thing.
We definitely want it to be guided by your officials to
Mhm.
what they needed. We of course have an outline, but we want to make sure that not every county is at the same level at the same time, so.
92 counties, 92 ways.
Right.
Yes, 600 cities, 600 ways. So,
So is the official title the Cyber Ready Community Pilot Program?
yes.
And you anticipate working with the city and perhaps the school corporation at the same time?
Yes, sir. Yes, and I've already reached out to Jasper, but so hopefully they'll get back with me, and if not, then maybe I'll.
We may walk across the road.
Yes.
Walk down the sidewalk, yeah.
Yeah.
But we would, welcome any
Mhm.
assistance you would have to open those doors for us too.
All right. If you all have any other questions later, my information's on there. If you would like, to have an update in a few months, I'm happy to do that too. So, just let me know, and I'm here to assist you guys. So.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. Thank you all so much.
It's good to see you guys.
Thank you.
So you have to know if that minimum brochure holder I sent out last week, you know if that's on somebody's inventory or? Because I would ask the board to allow further extension to take it. Everybody else needs it.
Chad's asking me, do you know if that aluminum brochure holder that you say that they, is that our inventory somewhere? It's in the annex, like downstairs, when you walk in. He was mad because I think people are pretty extensions. Just curious. That's fine, thank you. Bye.
Yeah.
My upper leadership of like. Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's take my help, maybe this will help them figure that out. That's my hope, I'm good, there's something to it. We won't count on it.
Those computers, something that you go ahead and contact them.
I can sign it, send it in now. You have what the ones you get, right?
Should be on your
On your report, right?
report, yeah.
Let me call you this afternoon. Or I be home. No, I'll try to get it. I just have to leave at 3. I just have to leave at 3 today. Yes. Too much phone.
We had our last one.
What she ended up saying.
She's gonna look, she didn't think it was on there. But if you give it to them, it'd be the same thing.
I didn't know if it needed to be moved or if there was,
She didn't think it was on there, she's looking for it. She said
I
she
don't think
let me know.
anybody even knows who owns it. I mean, who takes ownership of these users.
I don't think it's put on inventory. That magazine. Pamphlet, right, downstairs. It's a metal.
I
I know.
You pass it every day down there, you don't.
I know what you're talking about, where we like getting rid of it.
I'm gonna ask the board here, if they're okay with letting that Purdue extension use it for half the money. I was trying to get rid of it, so it doesn't like. Our other option would be to recycle these, but I won't. So I've got 2 emails going now, one, please recycle it, and the other one, Purdue, you're welcome to have it.
So these, do you want me to keep holding them for spares that nobody comes at once, or?
I'd say I'll keep those with the, those computers from Casa when they come, so I'll try to have that company send me a box. I'll stuff all the stuff in there and they can give us what they give us for.
I'd be surprised if those estimates if we don't get, $50,000-$75 a piece out of them.
So what are these things?
What's your iPhone? There's two more.
Yeah, is this a new model? Is it old? I don't know anything about it.
It's from the assistant director. It's not that old because 911 got them in Gene and stuff.
This is relatively new.
Yeah, I always thought, we'll keep two of them here as spares in case somebody's.
They move the tools.
It's the ones that she's got over here. Yeah, that's a relatively new phone.
And again, if we get something for us, better than just throw them away.
Honestly, what do I got? I can't talk with what cases really do. I got a clear case on it and stuff that's under it. It's gross.
7.
I think mine's a Note 10 or Note 11.
Mine's over 3 years old. But it works.
I got mine to get it fixed. They broke it and they're trying to fix it, so they should replace it.
Well, I'll keep them as spares and
XR.
then use it at one point.
I don't know, I'm more either. My kids would probably tell you.
So the first thing I wanted to bring up to the board, we have an aluminum brochure holder in the base, our first floor here. Purdue Extension has said that they could use it. Does anyone on the board have an issue with allowing them to have it?
I have no issue.
No.
Just for the record, just so we have a record of it, in case it is on the inventory, I'll make a motion that we approve giving this to the Purdue Extension.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries, so I'll tell them that they can have it. Here's what it looks like.
Yeah, I've seen it. I
So
walked
we're
by it
gonna
a million
move the metal
times.
brochure stand from,
I just walked
Here
in
to-
mid-conversation, wasn't sure what you were talking about.
From the annex to the Purdue Extension. Next up, we have a joint resolution 2022-3 for a judicial officer.
it was already approved last time, you just didn't sign.
Okay, thank you.
It was approved by the council.
It looks like it just needed my signature as Mr. Kleesner's, and Dr. Morton will sign it as well. So just for the record, that is being taken care of. Resolution 2022-4, raise. Commissioner Ramos, you're gonna present that?
Yes, Mayor Vanderhyde from the city of Jasper brought to our attention at the last Du Bois Strong meeting that the city of Jasper had applied for, or was applying for a grant, and they received some communication that indicated that they had stronger letters of support. They felt like they were in a really good position to get this grant, and this grant is designed to, or would be used to develop a rails and trails facility or project, looking eventually, and they're going to, again, just like Mr. Kaiser said while ago about in phases, this could happen in phases, but eventually we're looking at the Indiana Railway Museum track from Huntingburg to French Lick, and possibly adding trails alongside of sections of that, or eventually all of it. So I put together a little resolution here, and Mr. Schneider looked at it and added a resolution number line on top, and then the city attorney also saw it and added some more wordage to it, and I've shared that with you.
Yes.
It's simply a bunch of whereases, and now therefore we support the Du Bois County Board of Commissioners do hereby support the rails and trails concept and the city of Jasper's application for funding through the Department of Transportation Raise Grant Program. So I've got some copies here if you haven't seen the latest version of it, but
Would you like these to be executed as well, or is one single copy good?
Just one,
So I think you have one copy in front of you there.
no, I actually handed all three of them down there, so. I need to take one over to the mayor, over to the city hall after the meeting. Because they want these pretty quick.
So I handed you a copy of the dress code and one of the raised, or I handed it to
Okay,
Mr.
there's the raised grants. Did you want to work up into this raised grant for your own reference? And we don't need a copy, do we? Sandy needs a copy.
We need a copy of the resolution, yes.
Then we need to sign the second one. So I need to take one over to the mayor.
Take one to the city, keep one.
Let's just sign all of them. If we don't need it, we can discard them.
Do what?
This is number 4, isn't that the number I wrote on it?
Yes.
I'll be missing the next one down.
Thank you.
And it's the same one you sent me by email, correct?
I'll move that we approve resolution 2022-4, the raise resolution of support.
I'll second it.
Okay, got a first, second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Sandy, when you said the same one I sent you, the latest one I sent you was after the city attorney made some
Right.
changes.
Yes.
Okay, that's the same one.
And did you get
I
back?
think Chad made some formatted
No, I did
changes
not.
to it to make it fit the page, but it's.
I have 3 of them here.
I need one back to take over to the city.
I gotta sign a couple. Here you go.
Yeah.
And then you have the dress code, one? Can you sign?
Oh, I have that. I do have that in there. And it's this. Did I not sign it?
That's what I mean, we sent you over a copy too.
So this is the second, read it back.
I have the dress code.
Yeah.
So you don't need this?
Well, we've got 2 copies here. There we go.
And this is resolution,
Kitty printed off 2, I believe.
Okay.
She wanted you to have a clean one, I think.
Oh, that's yours to give to the city, all right?
Are there any changes on that one, Commissioner Brown?
this, you said this one down and I, so this is the same as this. Okay, so now we have another copy.
All right. That's everything that's on the agenda. There no, Mr. Schneer's going on there, 10:45, Mr. Schneer.
I've circulated around following the commissioner's passage of the ordinance and the council passed their resolution or at their last meeting supporting the ARPA plan funds.
Yes.
These infrastructure funding agreements I'd like to present for your consideration and action. I will take them up. I will take up St. Anthony first. This is a proposed agreement. I've heard back from council. I've made their changes. And it's 18 months to get the project completed in. And if agreeable, we'd execute that.
Okay, I will move that we approve the water infrastructure funding agreement between the Board of Commissioners of DuBois County and St. Anthony Water Utilities.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
2 separate ones for Patoka Lake Regional Water and Sewer District for drying beds and DuBois Water, I think DuBois Sewer Infrastructure Project. These I'm going to ask if you do approve them to cite them twice. These have been presented to the district's board. They signed, but they didn't sign the clean copies, so all that. And then, do you want to make a disclosure?
Yes.
Before that vote?
Yes.
Thank you.
And in fact, I have it filled out here, a hard copy filled out that they would like to have back at the district. Conflict of interest disclosure on this one since I sat on both boards. I'm not sure how that's a conflict, but It is a conflict.
Does
Does he
we're,
have to fill out a conflict of interest form with us then?
he has done that. I think that same form will work for both boards. in my
So just
opinion.
make a copy of this then?
I believe that would be sufficient, yes.
Okay.
Does it have to be uploaded in Gateway then?
I think we're doing this, my legal opinion is he has no pecuniary interest whatsoever in this transaction. We're doing it just to make sure our bases are covered. They just
We talked to Chad, sign the second one.
Oh,
It's being done out of abundance of caution, not.
even a little bit more than that, yes.
I don't think it matters.
You want me to print it over here?
Sure. Let's do that.
Mr. Schneider, any problem with me doing these at the same time?
I'd ask first that we accept Mr. Bromus's disclosure.
Okay.
Acknowledge it and accept it.
You're saying anything?
They have to sign it. So I can know what to write here.
We're just signing as an appointing board. You appointed, this board appointed me to that board.
I'll move that we recognize and acknowledge receipt and signatures on the uniform conflict of interest disclosure statement presented to us by Commissioner Brown. Just so we have that in the record. I'll move that we recognize and accept.
Second. Sorry.
Got a first and a second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? So did you abstain
So is
from
he-
presenting it, or how do we?
I abstained from
Okay.
voting on the contract with local water and sewer.
Oh, you're abstaining from these?
Mhm.
Okay.
So you made a motion for the acknowledgement. Is it two?
2 in favor, 1 abstention,
Correct.
no opposition.
And then there'll be one abstention from the contracts as well.
On St. Anthony and on the.
No, just over.
Okay, so we have 2 agreements here in front of us. The first, $100,000 for the Swift Drying Bed projects for Potoka Lake Regional Water and Sewer District, and the other one, $100,000 for the Du Bois Sewer Infrastructure Project. I will move that we accept and sign both of these.
Okay.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions?
Aye.
Okay, so those need signatures. Anything else on that, Mr. Schneider?
There's one more for the, yes, the Northeast Du Bois Fire District.
Yeah, this has to be uploaded in Gateway.
Hmm.
You have to upload this, I think, in the Gateway.
I do,
I think you have to upload this in the Gateway, I think, or talk to Amy because these have to be filed with the clerk.
Yeah, I don't think there's too much to it. Okay, here are the Potoka agreements. This is the final agreement for today is a public safety infrastructure funding agreement between the Board of Commissioners of Du Bois County and the Northeast Du Bois Fire District in the amount of $300,000. This is for the fire station and ambulance bay project. I will move that we approve signing these as presented.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carried.
Is this left blank for a reason? There's 2 of them in here, you guys are.
Yeah, it's because there's a sticker that says sign here and I didn't. I wasn't on that other sticker.
The first 2 pages of the first one.
Do I sign these even if I abstain?
Yes, you're approving the agreement.
Yeah. So only one on this, so.
Yeah, here's Northeast Du Bois.
Where did these 2 come from?
Those are on the front page of what Mr. Brahma still has, and then this one's complete. This goes like this.
Sorry, the stickers are just like that.
Mr. Canary, you have anything else for us today?
I do not.
No bankruptcy updates, anything fun like that?
No, sir.
Okay. Are either of the other commissioners going to the Region 15 Community Summit on May 15th?
I did not plan to.
Any more details on that? I'll look at my calendar whether I put it on there. May 15th?
Yeah, they sent a flyer out, I believe it's a Tuesday evening in Vernon.
No, wait a minute, May 15th?
That's what I wrote down, I could be wrong, but I believe that's what it was.
It's Sunday, isn't it?
We hope you can make our dinner, community summit, steak fast, Tuesday, May 17th, that's what I meant to say.
I don't have it down on the calendar, and I doubt that I did.
I didn't make a plan to or not to attend at the moment, so.
Are you on that board?
I am on that board, I will attempt to attend. Depends on that situation.
I will, give them feedback that you will attend if possible. Do you have a thing where you can RSVP? Did you get that? April 10th through April 16th has been set as National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. I just wanted to put it in the record that we are recognizing that. That will be beginning next week. It's just a way to recognize the people that work behind the headset and do a good job for us at the Du Bois County Communication Center. It's always good to recognize the people that are going to be there to answer the call when you're having an emergency or having possibly the worst day of your life. They're the people that are going to get those phone calls. So,
and sometimes you're just ordering a cheeseburger.
And sometimes, depending on your level of sanity, you may call them for other reasons, right? So just want to recognize those professionals and thank them for the work that they do. Sandy, if you put that in the minutes.
No, wait a second, you're way ahead of me here.
Okay.
What week are you talking about?
April 10th through April 16th, National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week.
What is it? National?
Here, I'll give you this, if, maybe for this, and then I'll, take it back when you're done. So, no, those folks do a good job, they're dedicated to their work, they really, I think what many of them really enjoy what they do, and they do a great job at it. And Stuart wanted to recognize them as well, the director.
Absolutely.
And I guess before I forget, I want to read this statement that was presented to us earlier regarding the Mid-States Corridor. It says, this is from Mark Militarski with the Coalition Against the Mid-States Corridor. And here's what he said. We are a group that includes well over 7,000 signatures against this proposed project, along with several organizations that include the Hoosier Environmental Council, the Indiana Forest Alliance, the Indiana Chapter Sierra Club, the Indiana Forest Conservancy, the Environmental Law and Policy Center, Orangeville Rise, and others, including several businesses. Personally, I wish I was here when the RDA was first formed and came to you to donate toward the study of the project. A commitment of $1.75 million over 3 years. A process, unfortunately, that did not allow the input from residents, not only within Du Bois County, but all the other counties that would be affected. A sales pitch that talked about all the economic benefits it would bring without any supporting facts. While we can't do anything to change that, over the past couple of years, our coalition has tried to reach out to the governor, the commissioner of NDOT, key political leaders, Secretary of Transportation, and Highway Administration for face-to-face meetings to share our concerns with very little success. In fact, the only face-to-face meetings we've had are with project managers from NDOT, always with the same message. We just must wait until the results of the study. In the meantime, it has been very apparent the RDA has met with legislators. The governor and NDOT, or what members of the RDA have stated with other councils. It has been a process where key people and donors of the study have had an unfair advantage and influence over the process and study, even though Lockmuir or NDOT will try to say otherwise. Sometime this month, NDOT is supposed to announce the outcome of the study. Whatever is determined, if it is not a no-build decision or simply improvement to 231, the next step after a public comment period will be to go to a tier 2 study for the preferred recommended route. At that time, the RDO will most likely be coming to the commissioner and council for more funding. The coalition against the Mid-States Corridor is asking at that time to please educate yourself on what the ultimate negative impact this will have to the farmers, the displaced homes, small businesses, environment, climate issues, and future costs that have never been considered for maintaining a new terrain highway, like ongoing road maintenance and police patrol, just to name a couple. While the RDA will reference the economic development study done for DuBois Strong, it is filled with many flaws and inaccurate projections and estimates. There are studies that have shown how small and mid-sized towns suffer when a bypass is put in, while no results have ever been studied whether all the economic developments promised and other benefits ever happen. Don't be fooled. Thank you for your time. Does anybody else have a comment? Or it looks like we lost most of our crowd here. So I don't see any other comments for the RDA or Mid-States Corridor. Anybody on the board want to recognize anything about Mr. Notarski's letter? Not this time? Okay. The help cohort, I reached out for a little more information on that. I sent it out last night. I think Commissioner Promise, I put you on it. I don't think I had you on it. I put him on it because he was leading the hiring department of it. But
Yeah, and I'll follow up with that. And I'll be interested to talk to Alexander about that as well. But I did get feedback from the auditor at Kosciuszko Company about what they did. And they went with the part-time. In fact, I think they had somebody on staff who simply is assuming those responsibilities. But you raised the question that I hadn't considered. What if we go ahead, because I kind of told her that this was our thought process, if we go ahead and hire a full-time person immediately for this position, with the thought that they would be working the 28, 29, 30 hours, whatever it is, on this health project initiative. And then the other, in the beginning, it'll only be a few hours, 5 hours or 6 hours, something like that, would be administrative work for the county. How does that affect our ability to pay them out of the ARPA money? Would we have to separate those things and pay them out of county general for the work that they're not putting toward the health grant initiative? And I want to pursue that further and get an answer to that, because I think that might make a difference in how we look at this.
I guess I would say that we've already taken revenue. Our plan is to take revenue loss from the ARPA funds, put it into county general. So it's, to me, it's one and the same.
Okay, so it might have to come from that.
The health part is being paid for in the ARPA fund. We didn't move that.
We get the 30% of ARPA funds that went into the health program, plus the $1 million that Oakland will add to that. We could pay that person out of those funds, and not out of the revenue replacement funds. And I did raise that question with Mayor Danny Spinner, and when he was down at the AIC meeting, and he wasn't sure. So I'm looking forward to trying to get an answer to that question. So that's as much as I've done with it.
My initial thought would be it shouldn't make a whole lot of difference, because we're meeting, once we meet the program requirement of 20 or 30 hours or whatever it was. That's what the requirement is, so I don't think it'd be a problem to use those funds for that, but I could be wrong. For that position, even though they're doing 5 hours a week of other items not related, it didn't seem like that would be a significant change. Did you have a comment, Mr. Schneider?
I was simply making the same distinction that Mr. Brown's made.
That you were talking about paying them out of that, the money we designated to help, not out of the money we've already taken as loss.
Right.
Makes sense. At least for the first year of that position, if that's all that it lasts, it's gonna be,
Well,
it'll be pretty insignificant.
well, not really. I mean,
10 hours.
it'll last 4 years, won't it?
No, this position is for this, I thought it was, they're only funding the 20,000 for this first
For 1
year.
year.
Strategic investment plan, we would be 100% on the hook for the rest of it.
But
You're saying we could take it out of the
We can take it out of
help money
Help money.
as it gets implemented, I see what you mean. I guess I was considering just that first year, and then we're on the hook for the rest of it, one way or the other. Okay, so that'd be good if you follow up with that.
I'll follow up with that and see if I can get an answer. I've not talked to Alex about that, so I don't know if he'll have an answer. Okra may have to.
I think they're figuring it out as they go.
Yeah.
So it feels like so far.
Yeah.
Not saying, I'm not trying to.
I'll raise the question and they'll come up with an answer.
I hope so. Okay. Anything else on that?
No.
Lynn says that stand is not on anybody's inventory.
Okay.
Department head meeting? Should that be next week, following week? It's after the, let's see what I get.
We have not advertised for it yet.
No. Do we advertise for it?
Or not advertise, I mean, send it out to let everybody know.
I've got it down to the 20th.
Do you think we have business that we should do, or just that it's a good practice to keep it going?
I think it's good practice to keep going, but it would be up to Marty and Sandy primarily as to.
Marky and I talked about some we could bring up with the next one.
I'm unsure, is it my turn? Probably.
I did the last
Have you done one
one.
recently? What's that? The department head meeting?
The last one, didn't it?
The one before the last?
I did the January one.
You did the January one. Okay. Didn't know.
We were all downstairs and we were all wearing masks, and I said, folks, 6 weeks, this will be over with.
I remember doing one recently, so I don't remember when it was.
I'd say it's probably my turn, then you'll get, start the rotation over the rest of the year, so I'll take the
April 20.
second quarter. All right, great, so I'll do that. Another thing we're having a problem with is I didn't have it in my notes, but the Facebook page, we're getting in trouble with that. It's saying they're gonna kill it on the 14th of the month or something. I don't know what's going on.
I don't know enough about how to chat.
It says that we have a gray account. I don't know, I don't know what it means. I've read it multiple times, but don't know what it means. I tried looking it up, but within the next 10 days, I guess, I reached out to Facebook for help and have gotten nothing back. So I don't know, we may get our account locked up and have to start a new one for some reason. I'm not sure. So just want to give you a heads up.
I read what you sent in. I agree, it didn't make a whole lot of sense. I kind of seen it maybe, but I don't remember what it was now.
So yeah, that's something I'll have to work on. And what else do we have here? I don't have anything else for today. Commissioner Hostetter?
Just check your email, there's an update from Mary on funding from the regional service district.
Good news, bad news, indifferent?
Indifferent.
Okay. All right, we'll check that out. Mr. Browns?
No, I have nothing else.
Anything from Mr. Schneider?
No, sir.
County auditor? Is there something from the health department you gotta do? That's all there's one go.
Oh, that's just a That's just a county vehicle policy use that
I'm looking.
Greg's looking into, because they have a plan that's kind of does things different than our handbook.
Which is the 11. Got started, but we'll
So,
check that out.
that's
You're
just-
in this
That's what
process.
we're looking into. Yes.
Anything from Highway Department? Yeah, you guys still hanging out? Anybody else?
I still-
So you're a new face in the crowd. I think I know who you are, but do you want to tell us who you are just for?
Yeah, the Herald, like the paper here just hired me, so like they had me like cover this meeting today, first time ever, so I'm Dorian DeGray, by the way. Yeah, Dorian.
What's your first name?
Dorian DeGray. So I'm brand new to the whole area and all this, so that's what I'm here.
Well, welcome. I'm glad you were here.
We were all brand new at one time.
Hopefully you stick around long enough and we can pick on you like we do all the other ones. So thanks, Dorian. It's nice to have you. If you need anything from any of us, we try to be cooperative as much as we can.
I need something from Harold. I can't get on my the electronic version anymore. I'll have to call down there and find out what's going on.
I think they weren't charging me for a while and then they shut me out a week ago, so I had to start paying them again.
Well,
I mean, I wasn't trying to do it for free. I just don't think the automatic thing quit taking my payment.
We've always had the paper prescription and still do. In fact, Maryland just paid it a month ago or something like that. And I think there's some kind of communication internally down there where they don't know that I've got a subscription, but I do.
Okay.
I have the exact same issue with the courier. I have a subscription, but I cannot get online, and when I get online, it asks for my address to be able to access it, and it says there's no subscription there. And I'm